Jojo in the Hunter x Hunter world. Chapter 1. The faint morning light shone into the room through the light blue curtains. The curtains softened the light, casting a gentle blue hue. The room wasn't large, but the light filtering through the window illuminated it brightly. The wooden floor had a light brown tint due to age. A boy of about 12 or 13 years old sat still on the bed, his expression blank as if he were simple-minded. He was Liu Guang, a young man from Hua country. He had just graduated from university after muddling through 4 years at a third-rate institution, barely earning a diploma. There were plenty of college students like him. It would be difficult to find a job with this worthless piece of paper. He and his roommate had been working on a game, but instead of making money, they lost some. After drinking a bit of wine, he woke up here. Fortunately, he had a younger brother, so taking care of his parents shouldn't be a problem. The boy's bed wasn't far from the mirror. Sitting on the bed, he could clearly see himself in the mirror. 5 minutes ago, he had assimilated the memories of this body. His name was John Belosovich, male, 12 years old, black hair and black eyes, 1.65 meters tall, decent looking, healthy with no bad habits, and not an orphan. His parents were alive, but he had no house, no car, and no younger sister, nor a star-shaped birthmark on his neck. No broken engagements, no provoking of powerful figures, no magic. This seemed like a safe world. "John, come down for breakfast." The boy withdrew his gaze, got up, quickly tidied his clothes, and hurried downstairs. His father was a member of some kind of gang, but John wasn't clear on the specifics. Perhaps it was deliberately concealed, as John knew very little about him. In John's memories, he had only seen him once. His mother was also very mysterious. It was said that she was a major shareholder in some company and had married his father for the sake of profit, so she rarely cared about him. The real situation was unknown. She was only slightly better than John's father, but at least she would visit John once a year. John was fostered in the home of his mother's former butler. John had grown up in the old butler's house since he was a child. He also took the butler's surname, and the butler and his wife were good to him, treating him like their own son and never skimping on his allowance. "John, why did you get up so late today?" The butler's wife turned her head to look at John and then turned back to clear the table. John picked up the mouthwash, went into the bathroom, unscrewed the cap, gargled twice, grabbed the wet towel on the side, wiped his face a few times haphazardly, and turned around to eat. "Hey, John, is something wrong? You seem strange today." The butler's wife looked at John with a suspicious expression. John's expression stiffened, then he revealed a warm smile. "It's nothing. I didn't sleep well last night. By the way, are we having apple pie today?" "Of course, hurry up and wash your hands." The butler's wife's attention was instantly diverted. "Hey, we've been eating apple pie for 2 days now." He breathed a sigh of relief, secretly thinking that he was lucky to be quick-witted, otherwise he would have been exposed on the spot. To be discovered less than an hour after transmigrating would truly be the shame of a transmigrator. Although he had inherited the memories of his predecessor, some habits were still difficult to change. "John, I'm going out now." The butler's wife picked up a small basket and prepared to leave. "Also, there's ice cream in the fridge, but don't eat too much." John rolled his eyes. "I'm not a child anymore." John breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the butler's wife leave. John ate a few mouthfuls haphazardly and went upstairs. Because it was summer vacation, the 12-year-old little Horno had time to understand the world. From his memories, this world was definitely not Earth. None of the countries on the world map were ones he had heard of in his previous life. And those strange continental shelves. Earth couldn't have created them even in another 100 million years. Little John was still young and his understanding of the world was not mature. He couldn't determine which world he was in from his memories. John turned on the computer to search for information. This old computer belonged to the butler and his wife's son. It was quite old, but they had given it to John based on the principle of making use of waste. The server took more than a minute to load. He looked at the recommended and pinned posts. His hands quickly typed a few words and clicked. Looking at the answers given by the search engine, John was directly dumbfounded. Whale Island, surrounded by the sea on all sides, residents mainly engaged in fishing, beautiful scenery, with a large number of rare animals. Whale Island is the birthplace of Gone Freaks, the protagonist of Hunter x Hunter. Combined with the fact that the professions of the wealthy on the rich list he just saw were inexplicably filled in as professional hunter, John was now convinced that this was the world of Hunter x Hunter. This world could be considered a mid-level martial world, with an extremely high level of danger. What a safe world this is! I thought it was a slice of life world, but I didn't expect it to be the Hunter world. John lay on his back on the bed, recalling the bits and pieces of his previous life. A fear of not being able to return home and a fear of his life being out of his control intertwined. He recalled his homeland in his previous life. Although he was a wage slave, at least there was a government to stand up for you, you wouldn't be casually killed at any moment. In this world, if you were casually killed by the Phantom Troop, who would you cry to? Suddenly, John was stunned. He remembered the novels he had read in his previous life. Generally, the protagonists who transmigrate would have a golden finger. He silently recited, "Old Grandpa, System Kun, Main God, if you're there, make a sound. System is activating." A heavenly electronic voice came from within his brain. Even the window outside. What? A system. I am indeed the chosen one. God still loves me. John suddenly became ecstatic. This definitely wasn't a dream. Thinking that he could also start a path of showing off like other protagonists, killing in all directions, and reaching the pinnacle of the world. No, as the king of the world, how could he not have a harem of wives and concubines? The golden finger had arrived, and next was the time to show off. Thinking of this, his smile gradually became perverted. Detecting the energy system of this world, synchronizing. Jojo's bizarre adventure is starting. When John saw this name, he fell into a moment of silence. This familiar interface, this familiar feeling. This seemed to be the failed game that he and his roommate had made in order to ride the coattails of Golden Wind. It had most of the stands and items from Jojo parts 1 to 7. Because everyone was a Jojo fan, it was made very carefully, which led to an incomplete store system, so the game was a money-losing product. This game was similar to NetEase's games, you could spend as much as you want, but you'd still get beaten into a little brother. System, are you there? John tentatively asked. The system didn't answer. John understood in his heart that this system wasn't very intelligent. He had heard that some people even had romances with artificial intelligence systems, which made him a little envious. But John was quite grateful that the system at least wouldn't kill him at the slightest provocation, and there wasn't a system elf constantly chattering for no reason. Seeing that the system didn't respond for a long time, John skillfully opened the newbie gift pack. Still the familiar recipe, still the familiar taste. Inside were 3 covered cards, an item card, an ability card, and a stand card. Flipping the stand card would 100% guarantee a stand, but what you got completely depended on your luck. Luck. Chapter 2. Right now, John's luck is still unknown, but in his previous life, Liu Yiguang's luck was definitely that of an African. He was always below the normal level, SSRs and single pole miracles simply didn't exist. At first, he was just an African native, with a slightly dark face. Who would have thought he would gradually evolve into moon-viewing black? For face-based games like this, John never had a chance. Who can understand the pain of an African? In the beginning, he carried newbies, but after 10 days, the newbies turned around and sang victorious songs. He could only barely survive by relying on pity pulls. Afterwards, everyone looked at him differently. For an African, this game was extremely unfriendly. He remembered that the initial stand he drew last time was Pearl Jam. This stand had no offensive power at all, its special ability was to make food taste better and have healing effects. It was added specifically to increase playability, making it difficult for players to collect all the stands. The probability of drawing it was extremely small. In a sense, John's luck was very good. This is a fighting game, and with Pearl Jam, he couldn't even leave the newbie village. Rerolling the account, he got Hermit Purple, the most useless stand passed down through generations, only slightly better than Pearl Jam. This luck could be described as unpredictable. But since he had transmigrated, his luck from his previous life shouldn't follow him, right? John swallowed nervously, a drop of cold sweat trickling down his temple. Actually, this world is much better than Dragon Ball, where one death means a ball disappears, or Ultraman, where one death means a city disappears. This world also doesn't have a filial son like Black Zetsu monitoring the world. In this world, as long as you are cautious enough, surviving is still possible. If he could survive until he mastered divine skills and collected star platinum, the world, King Crimson, then what Crollo, what Ant King would have to lick his shoes? John couldn't help but fantasize. His golden finger was the game he made himself, and he knew all its functions very well. John silently recited, "God bless me." He closed his eyes tightly, looking solemn, as if he were performing some kind of ritual. The ability card was guaranteed to produce ripple energy, which was a bug in the game. The item he got was Jotaro's hat, which had a special bonus for star platinum. But it had nothing to do with him. Ripple is a concept from the first and second parts, a type of energy similar to chi, derived from the daily breathing of living beings. It is life energy, and ripple is the extraction of this energy from cells through breathing. Because ripple requires practitioners to breathe in a fixed rhythm, if the rhythm of breathing is disrupted, ripple cannot be used. Therefore, the power of ripple is a paean to courage. However, Jojo, as a manga, was not popular in its early stages. In the second part, ripple had already developed to its peak. It must be said that Araki was indeed Araki, his genius ideas were indeed different from ordinary people. In the third part, he directly abandoned the ripple system that had been painstakingly improved in the first two parts and introduced a new stand system. This effectively suppressed the explosion of combat power and the problem of changing maps. He even claimed that it was a psychic wave, but Jojo's charm did not diminish but increased. It was the stance that made Jojo reach the altar, but ripple still had great charm. The history of mankind is a paean to courage. This is my last ripple, moved many people. Ripple is still a very good ability, it can heal and output damage. The output is relatively weak compared to Nen in this world, but ripple has healing abilities that Nen does not have. Apart from a few specialization type Nen abilities, most Nen abilities do not have healing abilities. Ripple can also walk on water and climb trees like Chakra in Naruto, and it also has weak control abilities. Ripple is a jack of all trades. Ripple and Nen are actually similar products, they are both products of life energy. If he had the opportunity, he would try to combine Nen with ripple breathing to see what effect it would have. It is said that Togashi's Nen was inspired by Araki. John tried to attach ripple to his hand and immediately bent the iron spoon. John was stunned for a moment, is it so awesome? John's breathing became chaotic with excitement, and the ripple gradually faded away. Very realistic, it disappears if the breathing is not right, which is very consistent with the setting. But John was just an ordinary person before he transmigrated. In high-intensity combat, he had to maintain vigilance while also concentrating on maintaining a fixed breathing pattern. This required a strong physique, a body that was panting every few steps could not practice ripple. Now, John was not so weak, but he couldn't be considered strong either. This ability requires calmness, which is a huge test for John. As an ordinary person, it is almost impossible to remain calm when facing a life or death crisis. Integrating ripple breathing into instinct is still a long way off. The increase in power from ripple is still very good. With this ability, fighting is simply unsolvable, probably no one in the entire elementary school can be John's opponent. Most adults would not get any advantage fighting John either. But fighting is not just hand-to-hand combat, those street thugs are said to have guns. If I can't beat you, I'll kill you with a gun. So, after learning ripple, you must not be reckless. The law in this country is, in principle, against guns, but there are still ways to get them. For example, the city where the protagonist lives, Lafayette, is controlled by the mafia. The increase in defense from ripple is very small. A ripple master would be directly GGD if shot a few times by a machine gun. A Thompson submachine gun can kill a ripple user who has been practicing for many years, but it is difficult for guns to kill high-level Nen users. Although advanced ripple techniques can also block bullets, the bodies of high-level Nen users are so strong that they are superhuman and can even catch bullets with their bare hands. In addition, with strange and bizarre Nen abilities, no matter how strong you are, you may capsize in the gutter. John was determined to practice ripple hard, this is a life-extending skill. When designing this game, I didn't intend to use ripple as an attack method. In the game, the higher the ripple level, the greater the health regeneration per second. John looked at the card with great anticipation. This will be the foundation of his life in the future. John opened the card. A black figure gradually appeared. The figure was not tall, and the whole body was blue. The arms and head were covered in black. The skin below the chest was covered with button-like bumps. Wearing green glasses, it had a look of stay away. Strange and terrifying. Stone Free. Looking at Stone Free, John couldn't help but laugh. Although Stone Free is not as good as super powerful stands like Star Platinum, it is still an attack type stand. Chapter 3. Stone Free is the stand awakened by Jolan Kuja in prison. Destructive power, A. Can shatter steel, speed, B. Punch speed exceeds the speed of sound, durability, A. Precision, C. Cannot perform delicate movements, potential, A. Has great potential for growth, strength will change with the user's physical fitness and awareness, range varies greatly. As the 6th generation Jojo's stand, its potential for growth is still very high. If used well, it can be played in many ways. Stone Free is a humanoid stand composed of strings. Its close-range attack power is very strong, but of course, it cannot be compared with super powerful stands like the World and Star Platinum. But at least it has A-level destructive power, so it's no problem to smash iron rods. The stand can also be decomposed into a linear extension to increase the attack distance, but the strength will also decrease accordingly. It can also be used for surveillance and detection or to transmit sound. The stand decomposition phenomenon caused by the linear extension will be reflected on the user's body. John barely adjusted his breathing and used Stone Free on his finger. The flesh on his finger turned into a thin thread, and the thread moved freely under John's control. John had never been so excited. Stands are supernatural abilities that he could never have come into contact with in his previous life. Moreover, for a Jojo fan, awakening a stand is even more exciting. John controlled Stone Free to continuously extend. After running out about 9 meters, the stand gradually felt its strength failing. Beyond 9 meters, Stone Free can be said to have no lethality at all. Stone Free's long-range ability can only be used as an auxiliary. As expected, fighting still requires using the stand to punch people at close range. In this game, obtaining a new stand requires the use of a virtual currency, and there are 3 ways to obtain virtual currency: complete daily tasks and story missions. PK with other players. System gifts and cash recharges. For some unknown reason, the story missions cannot be activated, and recharging is also a black screen. Now, all that can be done are daily tasks. The place where John lives is only half a day's journey away from the legendary Yornu city. In a few years, the troupe might have a firefight with the mafia here. Therefore, the plan to cultivate and become stronger should be put on the agenda as soon as possible. Even for daily tasks, only the 10,000-meter Ripple Run is unlocked. John lives in the suburbs of the city, and there are relatively few cars on the surrounding roads except for the main road, which is just right for John to do the 10,000-meter run. John left a note, changed his shoes, and went out. He closed the door with a thump. The bright sunshine shone on John's face, giving rise to a sense of heroism. The road ahead is long and arduous, but now we still need to start all over again. John, using Ripple, seemed to have wind beneath his feet. 50 minutes later, John sat panting on a chair by the roadside. The progress of the 10,000-meter run was less than halfway. Once the breathing rhythm is disturbed, the odometer stops recording. In other words, the road run without the Ripple breathing method is wasted. After resting for a while, John started his unfinished business again. An hour later, John lay on the green lawn by the roadside like a dead dog. His chest rose and fell with his gasping. He was covered in sweat, and his clothes were sticking to his body because of the sweat. You should know that this was Joseph Joestar's initial training. Joseph completed the task within a week while carrying a breathing correction device weighing 100 kilograms. Although Joseph was older than John, if John had brought a breathing correction device, he would have suffocated to death on the road. I didn't expect the 10,000-meter Ripple Run to be so. This little body is too weak. He doesn't realize that he was also a useless person in his previous life and was no better. A pretty figure spotted John lying on the grass. John, of course, also noticed her. She walked towards John. After searching hard in his memory without success, John was sure that this was not someone he knew. She had smooth golden hair tied into a single ponytail. She wore a white t-shirt printed with foreign text, and light blue jeans showed off her good figure. Her facial features were distinct, a typical Western beauty. Watching the girl approach step by step, John was a little confused. Could it be that another girl was infatuated with his beauty? John was wondering how to politely reject the girl's kindness. Who are you? As a single dog for more than 20 years, a late-stage misogynist, he never knew what a girlfriend was. That awkward chat skill directly killed the conversation. In his previous life, the little girls he had a good feeling for were directly dissuaded by this skill. He was single by his own strength. The girl still looked at John with a smile. You will be fined for lying on the green belt. Looking at this awkward but polite smile, John couldn't help but blush, got up dejectedly, and gave an awkward smile. Boy, what's your name? The tone was quite arrogant, adding a bit of cuteness. John Barosovich. John was a little puzzled when he saw the girl's thoughtful eyes. The girl didn't talk much and turned to leave. The girl curled the corners of her mouth. John, interesting. This is really a weird person, John thought to himself. After John rested almost enough, he didn't stay too long and went straight home. Two teenagers about the same age as John were squatting in front of John's door, looking bored. These are Denai and Boyka, John's two best friends. John, you're back. Boyka looked at John in surprise. John, didn't we agree to go out and play together? What were you doing? Denai's words were a bit reproachful, but his face was very cheerful. John had long forgotten the agreement with them because of the transmigration and the golden finger. Sorry, I almost forgot. The next time, John fell into despair. To act, you have to act the whole part. Although John really wanted to integrate into them, it was impossible for an adult to play happily with two little brats. John's nimble fingers danced on the keyboard. This hand speed could even participate in Yang Yang's hand model in the king's avatar. Death times 999. John stared at a white kitten on the screen with bloodshot eyes, breathing heavily. What a trash game, he's died almost 1,000 times and hasn't passed the first level yet. Is this a game for humans to play? That's right, John is a noob. Watching Denai quickly pass the third level with only 2 fingers. As expected, I'm still not good at this kind of game. Operating with 2 fingers is still too difficult. Denai wiped the non-existent sweat from his forehead. Boyka glanced at Denai, the 5th level is the difficult one. Honto da Ze. John felt like he couldn't keep up with their rhythm. Are we playing the same game? Are the kids nowadays so awesome? Immediately, a blue figure appeared behind John. I've decided it's you stone-free cheat. With my near-sonic speed, I can't beat this trash game. 1 minute later. Death times 1000. John silently dragged the game into the recycle bin. Precision, D, what the hell? Chapter 4. A figure walked out of the alley quickly, with a head of silver hair and a face full of wrinkles, but looking not old at all. Andrew Barasovic worked as a butler in a wealthy family when he was young, and later married the maid of the wealthy family. Everyone didn't understand why Andrew, who was in his prime, retired inexplicably 11 years ago. That year, he received a task to raise a child who was still in his infancy. Every month, this family would give him a sum of money, and the reward far exceeded his income as a butler. This summer, John changed a lot. Although John often said some inexplicable things, he seemed much more lively. John also started exercising this summer and became more and more confident. Thinking about it, Andrew returned home. Although it was located in the suburbs, the house was not bad and very spacious. Yo, John, going out for exercise? Yes, Grandpa Andrew. John put on his shoes and went out. In the past 2 months, John has been doing 10,000-meter ripple runs every day. Now he can complete the task in one go, unlocking the second daily task, forced breathing correction practice. Except for eating and drinking, he would suffocate once he quit the ripple breathing method. John almost suffocated to death several times because he couldn't maintain the breathing method while sleeping. However, these trainings are still very useful, and John's physical fitness has improved a lot. Taut muscles are also all over his thin body. This is a huge leap from a battle power of 5 to a battle power of 10. The stand has also grown with the body. Originally, it could only emit a linear stand, but now it can condense a human shape with lines, greatly increasing the stand's destructive power. Even if he encounters an user, he has a certain degree of self-protection. Although he is still a younger brother, he has reached the point where he can withstand a pistol bullet and not die. You are the flowers of the motherland, you are the hope, only, look, that is the stadium we are building, it is expected to be completed next year. At the new school year's entrance ceremony, the principal stood on the podium and poured out chicken soup eloquently. The principal's speech was full of emotion and was delivered without a manuscript, which was enough to show his strength. However, according to rumors, the principal's speech is the same every year. The stadium has also been under construction for a full 7 years. The teachers' applause was endless, each louder than the last. Teachers don't want to be promoted and get a raise, this is the impression score. According to a teacher who did not want to be named, the principal is actually petty. John stood in the crowd. How should I put it? As expected of the manga world, there are all kinds of people. There is also a little devil who is as arrogant as an idiot. He also has natural green hair on his head, and he has endured great pressure at such a young age, or is it hereditary? John is also very desperate. He just graduated from university and traveled back to junior high school to continue studying. Think about the other time traveling seniors, born in some kind of family, with mates rushing to serve them. Or they went to Meteor Street to join the troupe, or at least traveled to Whale Island to become brothers with the protagonist. John doesn't even know when he is, and there is no unified dating system in the Hunter x Hunter world. Who knows how old the brat on Whale Island is, and he doesn't dare to do a background check. Jing, Gon's father, is a professional hunter. What, you want to investigate my son? The only thing he can be sure of is that the Chimera Ant arc hasn't started yet, and Netero hasn't retired yet. There have been no murder cases in your new city. I, John Barasovic, just want to live an ordinary life. In every school, there are always a group of idle troublemakers who pick on the weak. Because John was quite weak before the time travel, he was also one of the people who was bullied. Most people take a step back and see a brighter future, silently enduring it. If you get beaten, you just endure it. There are also some stubborn people who will resist, and then be bullied even worse. The school can't control these troublemakers. They are within the age of compulsory education, and the teachers can't control them. They go home and reflect for a few days and then come out again. Today, as usual, they occupied John's seat and were talking to the people in front. A little blonde saw John coming back. Hey, John, where's your gift? Everyone in the class turned their attention to John. Hey, you kid didn't buy a gift, did you? I finally managed to get promoted. I heard you've been exercising recently, don't you think you can beat me? You're very arrogant. They watched John remain motionless, unaware that John had changed people. John was shocked. It's been 2 months, and he hasn't had a chance to take action. Now there is a group of people who take the initiative to provoke him for no reason, and they have a feud with his predecessor. Could it be the classic plot where the villain provokes the protagonist, and then pretends to be B and gets slapped in the face? John has been waiting for this moment for 2 months. John is cautious, but these little devils are obviously not someone John can't afford to provoke. There is no need to be cautious when dealing with this kind of younger brother. As for the older ones coming after you beat up the younger ones, he is not afraid. If you have the ability, find an user to stand up for you. I didn't expect that I could enjoy the treatment of the protagonist today. Endure it for a while, the more you think about it, the angrier you get, take a step back, the more you think about it, the more you lose. You kid, are you listening to me? The little blonde roared angrily, it seems we have to have a good chat again. The people behind him also stood up and surrounded John. Everyone was also watching John with great interest, and someone took pictures when he was beaten last time. Danai and Boyka also wanted to stand up, but they pulled John back. Are you crazy? There are so many of them. Endure it for a while and the storm will pass, take a step back and see a brighter future. Endure it for a while, the more you think about it, the angrier you get, take a step back, the more you think about it, the more you lose. John patted Danai's hand to reassure him. I just want to reason with them, it's okay. John looked at Danai and Boyka, who were still very worried. I will beg for mercy if I can't beat them, don't worry. Looking at John's confident face, Danai nodded helplessly. Then both sides walked towards the toilet with tacit understanding. The toilet has always been a place for fighting. They are afraid of encountering teachers in the classroom, but the toilet does not have this concern. As soon as John left, people were discussing how badly John would be taught a lesson. Royer has specially learned martial arts, and he can fight even an adult. As long as John kneels down and apologizes, he will be beaten lightly. 5 minutes later, a row of people knelt in front of the urinal, and John walked back and forth in front of them. John didn't even use his stand, and they all knelt down. In view of their usual behavior, John specially used Ripple to let them see the beating of a gangster. John knocked down everyone in 1 minute, and the later time was just beating the wounded who fell on the ground. Some people hugged John's legs and begged him, and John originally planned to let him go. I didn't expect this kid to cry bitterly, and his snot dripped on John's pants. John's sympathy was extinguished. He hit him even harder. Anyway, Ripple can heal him, so he won't die. What kind of monster is this? More than a dozen people were knocked down like this. Give me back the cute John from before, bastard. Everyone was knocked down with one blow. Can he become so strong in 2 months? Damn, I'm going back to exercise too. Chapter 5. John tidied his hair and came out of the bathroom, while the group behind him didn't even dare to leave. Losing a fight with more than 10 people against one, how could they ever face anyone at school again? We gave him half of our allowance, I can't swallow this. We have to find a chance to get back at him. Get back at him? Who can beat him? He knocks everyone out with one punch. The dozen or so people fell silent, reminded of the various unequal treaties John had made them sign, and couldn't help but sigh. Are we just going to let it go like this? Some of the younger guys, used to bullying other students, weren't happy that the underdog had suddenly become the master. It seemed to resonate with a few of them, who looked somewhat tempted. Roya glanced at him. If you can, go ahead. The guy immediately shut up. The young man looked at Roya's miserable state and gave a sheepish smile. He decided to play it safe after all. John returned to the classroom, and the class was surprisingly quiet. Everyone was wondering why John had returned unscathed. The students who had bet on what kind of punishment John would receive looked like they had seen a ghost. John is so cruel, using this method to lure me into attacking, then he'll have a reason to beat us up. I won't fall for it. I'm too smart to fall for your tricks. These losers don't kick as hard as John. Roya seemed to have given up on revenge, always avoiding John whenever he saw him, which made John feel bored. He thought there would be a classic scene of the little one getting beaten, then the big one coming to help. For a whole week, Roya didn't find anyone to avenge him, completely failing to satisfy John's desire to show off and slap faces. It's not that we're weak, the two sides were evenly matched. After 300 rounds of battle, it was too late. Since the bathroom incident, no one dared to bother John anymore. John still went home early as usual. Because he didn't go the same way as Boyka, John went home with Dana. Summer hadn't completely faded, and the sky at 5 in the evening was still bright, the afterglow of the sunset dyeing the sky red. A few cicadas, the last singers of summer, were singing their final dirge. The alley was deserted, surrounded by abandoned old houses. This was the shortcut John took to school. Bang bang bang, thump, strange sounds came from the neighboring house. That's weird, I remember this place being empty. Dana stared at the old house where the sound came from. John, of course, also heard the sound, but after all, it was someone else's house, and he didn't want to be nosy. Wait, you said this house has been empty all this time? John's face instantly turned ugly. Dana didn't know what was happening yet. This feeling was like the instant vision of the EK village. This was the taste of trouble. Before John could think it through, the mud wall of the old house exploded, and a black figure was thrown directly from the second floor to the ground like a kite with a broken string. It was a middle-aged man in a black trench coat, with stubble around his mouth, which was full of blood. Blood flowed from his mouth all the way to his chest. His right leg was bent at an unnatural angle, the flesh was blurred, revealing white bones. The man gritted his teeth, staring intently at the hole in the wall. Damn brat, what are you standing there for? Run! The man whispered. Then a gun appeared in his hand, his eyes never leaving the wall. Another figure gradually appeared in the hole. Almost at the same time, the man fired his gun, frantically pouring bullets at the figure, as if he had a cheat, with unlimited bullets, one person firing the firepower of a company. The dense bullets made the figure's body shake, as if it had been impacted, and its legs couldn't stand steady, retreating step by step. But it didn't look like it was injured at all. John didn't hesitate for a moment and immediately pulled Dana away and ran wildly. Who could withstand this? He encountered this kind of thing even when he went home for dinner. The two people looked like they were not easy to mess with. John could still deal with street thugs, but just now the gun was like a Gatling gun. If he tried to stop him with Stone-Free's hand speed and accuracy, he would definitely die. Although he wanted to see an user, he didn't expect it to come true so quickly. If it was a weak user, John might go and test his strength, but these two ruthless people were obviously not John could beat. This wasn't being a coward, but being cautious. it was called a strategic retreat. A person wearing grey-black armor broke through the wall on the first floor and came out directly, about 1.75 meters tall, and it was impossible to tell whether it was male or female because of the armor. The man had been staring at the hole in the second floor and didn't react for a moment. The distance between the two suddenly narrowed. How much of your qi is left? Such a high firepower output consumes a lot of qi, right? The armored man taunted the man. How will I know if I don't try? The gun in the man's hand twisted and transformed into a heavy sniper rifle, the butt of the gun against the wall. Bang bang bang, the man fired several shots at the armored man. This heavy sniper rifle used armor-piercing bullets, used to snipe light tanks. The bullets hit the armor, but didn't penetrate it, as if they had encountered an irresistible hard object and fell to the ground. Although the armored man wasn't penetrated by the bullets, he still didn't feel good. His forehead instantly suffered a huge impact, his head tilted back, and he almost lost his balance and fell. Looking at the unscathed armored man, the man fell into despair. What kind of monster are you? It's useless, didn't I tell you? My defense is invincible. The armored man slowly approached the man. It could be seen that those few bullets had exhausted the man's last bit of qi, and even the gun in his hand couldn't be maintained and dissipated. The armored man kicked the man's left hand, breaking it, and said coldly, "Where is the thing? If you don't tell me, I'll kill you." The man smiled miserably. "Jackman, you'll never get it, it's in a place you'll never find." Jackman, the armored man, punched the man's head into the wall, and it was clear he was dead. Jackman groped the corpse repeatedly, and after failing, kicked the corpse a few more times. Damn it, where did he hide the thing? He shouldn't have had time to transfer it, right? Dozens of seconds later, Jackman calmed down. He seemed to have thought of something. Could it be that he gave the thing to those kids just now? Jackman thought it was possible and turned to chase after John. No one noticed the thin line sticking to the wall by the roadside. This was Stone Free's listening line. Damn it, this is troublesome. Because the man was defeated too quickly, John and Dana hadn't run far. John had a high probability of running away alone with his strong body plus ripple and stand. But Dana definitely couldn't outrun that non-user. John could run faster, but Dana couldn't. He had to think of a way. Suddenly, he heard a scream. Ah! Dana was lifted up by Jackman with one hand. Dana's face was pale, and her hands were flailing. What you wish for comes true. Jackman had just killed someone, there was still blood on his clothes, and his body was filled with a bloody smell, coupled with his fierce eyes. Dana was immediately frightened. Jackman wanted to strangle Dana to death, and then see if he had that thing. Stone Free John folded back, and lines kept emerging from his body, the lines condensed into a ball of lines. Stone Free only condensed the upper half of its body. One hand struck Jackman's hand, and taking advantage of his relaxation, the other hand threw Dana back. At least it was a stand with a speed of b, it already Jackman's arm 5 or 6 times at once. It must be known that from John summoning Stone Free to saving Dana and hitting Jackman, this series of actions took less than a second. Jackman's arm was also twisted into a strange shape, definitely a fracture, John judged. Jackman was careless because he thought the other party was a child, and thought it was unnecessary to waste qi to materialize armor to deal with 2 children. He didn't expect that a child's Nen beast was so strong. Jackman regarded the stand Stone Free as an Nen beast. Then a layer of armor suddenly appeared on Jackman's body, covering his whole body. The second round has begun. Looking at John's solemn expression, Jackman licked his lips. Chapter 6. This is troublesome, John said, looking at Jackman with a grave expression. John tried to get Jackman to stop. Would you believe me if I said we also met that uncle for the first time? Looking at Jackman's bloodthirsty eyes, John knew there was no chance of reconciliation. That armor could withstand that kind of firepower. Stone Free probably couldn't penetrate his defense either. The ability to ignore all attacks is impossible, this ability must have a flaw. I just don't know where that flaw is. If there were no flaws, this bastard would be invincible. I will definitely kill you, but you can also be proud. You are the only person in the world who has ever hurt me. You turtle, what's there to be arrogant about? If you have the guts, take off your shell and fight one-on-one. Put away your clumsy attempt at provocation. It's useless. John didn't expect Jackman to take off his armor. He used his strings to slowly drag Danae into the nearby alley. You want to save that kid, Don't you? No way, you're all going to die. As he spoke, he waved his fist and charged over. John's face was very gloomy. I just wanted to live a peaceful life, why did you have to come and provoke me? His plan exposed, John threw Danae more than 10 meters away. Jackman's movement speed wasn't slow. He arrived in front of John in an instant. Come on, armor man. A figure appeared behind him. Actually, John could compete with Jackman in endurance. Stone Free's stamina was not to be underestimated. But John was afraid of pushing Jackman too far, and Danae had already lost the ability to move. John didn't dare to bet Danae's life, and only parried with Jackman. As the saying goes, defend for too long and you will eventually lose. John kept blocking Jackman's attacks, and if he made a slight mistake, both Danae and himself would die. John leaned back in a tactical maneuver to avoid Jackman's fist. With a twist of his body, he reached Jackman's blind spot, and instantly, a large number of fine threads emerged from his body, like dense tentacles. The fine threads instantly wrapped Jackman tightly, like a silkworm cocoon. This summer, John hadn't relaxed his training with Stone Free. Thread binding was one of his training results. Seeing Jackman, who was bound, struggling frantically, but the threads didn't move at all, John breathed a sigh of relief. Finally rejected. John retracted the humanoid Stone Free. As for why he didn't aura Jackman, it was because Jackman's armor hadn't been removed, so hitting him was useless. Next, it was a competition of whose ability was more durable. John was very confident in his stamina. Jackman seemed to have resigned himself to his fate and gave up struggling. John suddenly had an ominous premonition and summoned Stone Free again. A terrifying aura came from the cocoon of threads. A faint light appeared on one spot of the cocoon. John seemed to realize something. No way. John quickly released Jackman from his restraints. Too late. An explosive force instantly tore apart the cocoon made by Stone Free, and the threads snapped. Several hideous scars appeared on John's left hand, and blood slowly flowed from his fingertips to the ground. I was almost trapped by you. Jackman's left hand swung weakly, and his right hand was still emitting white smoke. Jackman shook his hand, as expected, forcibly using enhancement-type abilities is still too difficult. Kid, die. Jackman's momentum rose step by step. John turned and ran, using Ripple to heal his wounds as he ran. Fortunately, John had already hidden Danae, and Jackman had been angered by John and didn't have the leisure to care about Danae. Without the restraints, John ran even faster. But he still couldn't shake off Jackman. The more dangerous it was, the more he needed to be calm, and John gradually calmed down. John tore off a piece of cloth, covered his face, summoned Stone Free, picked up a gas pump, and started spraying at Jackman. Because ordinary people couldn't see stands, the staff were dumbfounded. A gas pump flew up by itself. The pressure of the gas pump wasn't great. Even an ordinary adult could dodge it with preparation. Not to mention Jackman, who possessed Nin abilities. Jackman moved a few steps to the side and dodged John's oil gun sweep. Humph, you want to reach me with this speed? Jackman looked at John with disdain. Your next line is, you're too naive, kid. You're too naive, kid. How did you know what I was going to say? How did you know what I was going to say? Jackman had a gloomy expression, whatever, you're dead anyway. John pointed the oil gun nozzle at Jackman. Jackman moved to the side, suddenly tripped over something under his feet, almost lost his balance, and failed to dodge the oil gun spray. Everything is within my expectations, armor man. Jackman was covered in gasoline from head to toe, and retreated in a panic. Hey, what are you doing? It's dangerous, a clueless passerby reminded. John threw the lighter at Jackman with all his might. The lighter collided with the armor and exploded due to the excessive impact. In an instant, Jackman was engulfed in flames. Your armor should be immune to most physical attacks, right? What about high-temperature burning? High temperatures can burn you to death even through the armor. Armor man, this is my method. In the end, you still lost. John watched his whole body on fire, spread his legs apart, put one hand with his fingers spread out in front of his face, and bent the other hand down and back, striking a Jojo pose. Jackman knelt on the ground, letting out bursts of screams, deafening. Suddenly, Jackman stood up, clutching his stomach and laughing wildly. Ha ha ha. I can't hold it in anymore, I can't act anymore. Ha ha ha, He hammered the floor as he laughed. I told you, my ability is invincible. High temperature, low temperature, or electricity, nothing can penetrate my indestructible armor. It is a truly invincible ability. Chapter 7. How could there be such an awesome ability? I don't remember seeing this person in the story. John ran without looking back. How could he fight this? Even John felt this ability was too broken. The Phantom Troop would probably be in trouble if they encountered this ability. Jackman stood up with a grin, the flames not disappearing, still burning on his armor. Anyone who didn't know better would think the Human Torch from next door had wandered onto the set. Originally, John couldn't suppress Jackman very well, and now it's even more impossible. The opponent is cheating, has a lock on his health, full body enchantment, and a built-in thorn armor effect. If you hit him, he doesn't lose health, you lose health. If you punch him, your hand will catch fire. Who can withstand that? This ability must have a limit. Clearly, Stone Free can't achieve that. This invincible defense, it feels like I've heard of it somewhere. John ran faster than Jackman, and Jackman wasn't an emitter type, so he couldn't stop John. John had a chance to calmly think about his situation. Although there were fewer people on this road, it was during the evening rush hour, so there were still pedestrians on the road. Damn, look! Several passers-by stopped, took out their phones, and started filming. Abilities are generally invisible, except for conjurers. Jackman's unbreakable armor should be classified as a specialization type conjuration. Passers-by could also see Jackman's armor. Shocking! A certain magical man actually did this to a middle school student. John and Jackman ignored the passers-by. They started running wildly along the path beside the creek. If they continued on the main road, they might run into acquaintances. That would just add more burdens. The creek gradually widened, and the surrounding trees began to increase. The road seemed to be nearing its end, and the flame buff on Jackman's body seemed to have disappeared. John leaped into the water. When his knees sank into the water, John stopped sinking and stood firmly on the water. This was a kind of application of ripple ability. When trained to a high level, one could stand on the surface of the water like a ninja in Naruto. John's ripple Haman level was already about the same as Joseph Joestar's before he trained with Lisa. The resistance in water is much greater than on land. Most people can't exert their full strength in the water. The visibility in the water is also lower than on land. John's ability to stand on the water gave him a greater advantage than on land. Jackman stood on the road, watching John walking on water, frustrated and furious. Kid, have you forgotten something? Jackman turned and ran back. Could it be? I remember there's another kid. He shouldn't have run far either. He finally realized. John felt terrible. The protagonists in other books level up by fighting monsters, but this kind of perverted ability is hell difficulty for a newbie like John. Couldn't he just get a normal boss? Not only does the boss not have a debuff aura, but he also explodes with power. How can you play with such an invincible ability? Wait, invincible, water, armor, defense. John suddenly realized that the so-called invincible defense seemed to have appeared in Jojo's bizarre adventure. It was an afternoon many years ago, when a classmate recommended Jojo to my ignorant young self. How could I possibly like watching something like that? Muscle men are not as good as cute loli. That's what I thought at the time. I would rather starve to death and jump off this building than watch this anime. Jackman was jogging. He was betting that John would follow. But he didn't look back. Jackman was still very confident in the ability of unbreakable armor, not afraid of John's sneak attack at all. This was also Jackman's last gamble. Maintaining unbreakable armor consumes a lot of aura and stamina. He had already consumed a lot of stamina in a previous battle with a Hunter Association person, and his right hand was broken, which made his stamina consume even faster. In the end, he forcibly used a strengthening type ability once. Both his aura and stamina had reached their limit. Jackman was betting that John would fight him to the death. Knowing the man and going up forcing someone to do something difficult, this was learned from a certain philosopher who didn't want to be named. Stone Free was lying on Jackman's back, his hands through Jackman's armpits, holding Jackman in place. The atmosphere of philosophy was overwhelming. Watching American Billy wrestling, admiring capitalist big dicks. Listening to the Bulgarian Goblin King, being a socialist gay. Although this posture was eye-watering, it was very effective. Jackman was restrained and unable to break free. John pulled Jackman back, holding the thin threads of stone free. This posture could only restrain his hands. Jackman took the opportunity to turn around and rushed towards John. No skill, just a fighting style developed with the invincible unbreakable armor. This was Jackman's full blow. Because the distance was too close, John couldn't dodge. This move was powerful and heavy. John jumped back to slow down the impact. John had already turned his whole body into threads, so he wasn't seriously injured. That being said, John still flew very far and was knocked into the water. John performed another wave of water-treading magic. Armor Man, this is my escape route. Jackman didn't stabilize his body because of the sudden rush. John didn't let go of the line in his hand, stepped on the water, and pulled hard. Jackman fell into the water. How is it, Armor Man? If unbreakable armor could generate its own air, then John would really be helpless. Water was John's way to deal with unbreakable armor. In a moment of crisis, John recalled Star Platinum defeating Yellow Temperance, who also claimed to have invincible defense. Jackman struggled frantically, trying to get ashore. That was impossible. Silver ripples rippled in the water, like ultrasonic waves. Jackman couldn't avoid the ripples' detection if he wanted to sneak attack. As long as Jackman showed his head, he would be greeted with an unreasonable barrage of aura. Jackman's strength was slightly greater than John's stone free, but his strength in the water was only 1/10 of what it was on land. Most of John's body was on the surface of the water, which had little impact on stone free's combat power. I'm going to kill you! Jackman roared. John looked at Jackman indifferently. You should say that to yourself. Aura 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 aura. Jackman couldn't get up again. In John's ripple life detection, Jackman gradually disappeared with vital signs. Watching the completely dead enemy, John breathed a sigh of relief. His nerves relaxed instantly, and John almost failed to maintain the ripple and fell into the water. The setting sun gradually sank into the distant city. Next, I should go find Danae. Chapter 8. The next day, at dawn, the road was completely blocked off, and the once deserted alleyway was swarming with police. A burly man in a red windbreaker pushed through the crowd and strode past the police line, stopping beside the body. The deceased was indeed the middle-aged man Jackman had killed. The man in the red windbreaker looked to be in his 30s, with a square face that wasn't particularly old. He clearly didn't care much about his appearance, his hair was a mess, and he had a stubble of unshaved beard. He rummaged in his coat pocket, pulled out a pack of cigarettes, and lit one for himself. This is a crime scene, smoking is not allowed, a police officer said sternly, trying to dissuade him. Sorry, I just need a cigarette when I'm agitated, he said, stubbing out the cigarette and looking at the corpse before him. The right hand and right foot had comminuted fractures, the left hand was dislocated, and 4 or 5 ribs were broken, no, it should be 6, the facial bones were completely shattered, and there were multiple bone fissures. The facial attack must have been the fatal blow, the other injuries were likely caused by the enemy's desecration of the body. The man immediately deduced the situation at the scene. The lab report is out, the body 5 kilometers away is indeed Jackman. The material on his clothes matches the material covering Havel's face, an officer reported to the man, holding a report. The man had just bent down when another officer reported, at a gas station 2 kilometers away, several witnesses saw Jackman chasing a child. Oh, is there video footage? The man watched the video while ordering an investigation into the child's identity. Another uneventful day, John leaned against the wall like a salted fish. The teacher's class had become a place for John to relax. After all, he was a college student, so dealing with junior high school problems was more than enough. Sure enough, the education in the Celestial Dynasty far surpassed that of other worlds. Having experienced yesterday's battle, he suddenly felt that the present days were pretty good. Yesterday's battle seemed dangerous, but in fact, John received very few attacks. The attacks he did receive weren't strong enough to require Ripple to heal him, it was just a bit uncomfortable that his clothes were torn, and now he realized how good Crazy Diamond was. Yesterday's battle yielded huge gains. The battle with the armored man saved John several months of hard training, allowing him to accumulate enough gold coins for a second stand card draw. John planned to burn incense, bathe, and abstain for 3 days before drawing a new stand card. John walked the last part of the road alone. A young man in a red windbreaker leaned against a lamp post, looking like a salted fish with a cigarette in his mouth. His hand slowly came out of his pocket. His palm was facing John, covered with a large amount of chi, and John's alarm bells rang instantly. A fist-sized nin bullet condensed in front of his palm. John stared at the young man, his whole body tense, ready to run away at any moment. The nin bullet was fired, and John dodged to the side, avoiding the nin bullet. The nin bullet suddenly turned and flew towards John again. Stone free! The blue stand appeared in front of John, and the nin bullet's power was surprisingly weak, it was blown away with a single punch. The young man smiled wickedly, I didn't expect Jackman to be killed by a little brat like you. John looked at the young man warily. What was this? The little one was beaten, so the old one came. Was he about to fall into the classic routine of a fantasy novel? Was he going to get involved in a troublesome incident again? How troublesome, how troublesome! John wasn't afraid and prepared to flip over the next stand card at any time. The young man walked towards John with a smile on his face. John Belosevic, it really is you. I didn't expect Jackman to be killed by you. John still didn't relax his vigilance. The young man was smiling on the surface, who knew if it was an act. In other novels, you could tell whether someone had murderous intent with one glance. John was an ordinary college student in his previous life, he hadn't even killed a chicken. Yesterday, Jackman was also drowned, so how could he have so much experience to tell whether someone had murderous intent? Don't be nervous, I'm Robson Pont, a specialist sent by the Hunter Association. Robson took out a card, which was a hunter license. Yesterday, you killed the international criminal Jackman. Some inexperienced rookies tried to spread false information to hunt Jackman, and they all died. Robson took out Jackman's wanted poster. John withdrew his stand. Is that your nin beast? I guess. Robson invited John to sit down at a coffee shop. John learned that Jackman often stole things using his abilities, and he was a treasure thief. But unlike other thieves, he never sneaked in, he always faced his opponents head-on. He had thwarted his capture many times. John thought to himself that if he had this ability, he would definitely fly high. Jackman's downfall was still due to carelessness, he thought there was no danger in capturing 2 children, so he didn't use his nin ability. Robson was a criminal hunter who took over Jackman's case. But there were always some people who overestimated themselves and tried to make trouble, and that middle-aged man was just courting death by relying on his nin ability. You don't need to worry about what happens next. I won't tell the media that you killed Jackman, and I'll delete any records about you. Your ability is very interesting. You can see my nin bullet without using coalescence, which means you have a lot of talent. I can tell that you haven't received professional training. Can I see your strength? John was happy to do this because he had no idea how strong he was now. Fighting Jackman was too frustrating, and John longed to fight a proper nin user. John agreed to Robson's request. The two walked side by side to an empty space with weeds all around. There was only one alley for entry and exit. This was originally a small courtyard of a farmer's house, but the family had moved to the city many years ago, which was convenient for John and Robson. John adjusted his breathing, holding his hands in front of his chest to defend against Robson's attack. Robson stood in front of John nonchalantly, looking defenseless. Suddenly, Robson flew towards John without warning. This was a small trick of nin ability, the legs don't move, the chi is condensed at the tips of the toes, and the toes are slightly raised first, and then the ground is quickly tapped. It's not bad for sneak attacks, but this trick can only deceive newbies like John who have no combat experience. The drooping hands rose quickly like a salute, aiming for John's chin. Crap, he couldn't dodge. John Stone-Free quickly blocked and protected against the attack. Robson's left hand suddenly bent like a snake, bypassing Stone-Free's hands, and his palm struck John's chin directly. John was suddenly pushed up by a huge force, and John didn't have time to transform his chin line because it happened so suddenly. John flew 4 or 5 meters away, which was still the result of Robson holding back. If Robson hadn't turned his fingers into palms at the end, John might have been GG. Chapter 9. Robson didn't let John off the hook and followed closely, not giving John a chance to breathe. Robson's blow was powerful and heavy, stunning John instantly. He was still in a daze. Fortunately, he hadn't lost consciousness. Stone-Free fought with Robson, and Robson fired 2 nin bullets, both of which were knocked away by Stone-Free. Perhaps it was because John hadn't grown up yet, but Stone-Free was unsatisfactory in both strength and speed. Although the speed was similar to Robson's, John couldn't do anything to him for a while with his skills. Unlike the reckless Jackman, Robson was a graduate of the Hunter Association and had a special teacher to train his martial arts. John was forced to retreat by a set of routines. Stone Free gradually fell into a disadvantage in the battle. John wanted to walk around with Robson first to find his flaws. John, who was lying on the ground, propped himself up with his arms to stand up, but suddenly felt dizzy. What's going on? Why can't I stand up? Is it an ability? John tried to get up many times without success. You ignorant kid, the human brain is suspended in the cranial cavity. A heavy blow to the chin will cause the brain to shift, which is commonly known as a concussion, Robson said, looking at him like an idiot. Robson laughed and knocked back Stone Free, rushing directly in front of John. Sorry, you lost. Robson looked at John, who was stunned in place without any protection. He sighed in his heart that the kid was still a kid, and his battlefield awareness was too weak. He couldn't even use N. It was really lucky to defeat Jackman. Thinking, but the movement in his hand didn't stop, and he punched John in the stomach. If this punch hit him, John would be out directly. The fist moved the air and made a roar, causing John's pupils to shrink. It was too late to call Stone Free to quickly return to defense. Stone Free turned around and attacked Robson's back, trying to make Robson stop and return to defense in this way. Robson smiled contemptuously. He was very close to John, so there was no need to return to defense and he could directly kill John. The fist went into John's stomach and passed through John's stomach without hindrance. Impossible, how could it pass through? Facing him was John with a smiling face. Only then did Robson understand what was going on. My Stone Free is made of threads transformed from my own body. When John summoned Stone Free, he always used the parts covered by clothes to turn into threads. Otherwise, ordinary people could see John's abnormality. A person's body suddenly lost a part of flesh, which looked very scary no matter how you looked at it. Rain-like fists fell on Robson's back. John was merciful. After all, it wasn't a life-and-death enemy, so there was no need to use 7 pages of Ula. Robson seemed to lose consciousness all of a sudden and fell on John. Suddenly, Robson's other hand suddenly grabbed John's shoulder and threw John out with a wrestling throw. Impossible, how could he not be injured after taking so many Ulas from me? John looked shocked. Could it be that his body was as ironclad as Lover's? How could I not be injured? It hurt me to death. Yurnan beast is very powerful. Before you attacked, I used flow to protect my back. Robson was bullying John because he couldn't see an ability. Holes of various sizes appeared all over John's body, and countless threads flew out of the holes, tightly wrapping around Robson. Oh, it seems I won, John looked at Robson with a look that deserved a beating. I don't believe it. You can still make a comeback like this. Robson suddenly opened his mouth, and a laser shot out from it, hitting the ground next to John's head, emitting wisps of white smoke. John swallowed. He shouted at Robson, "Don't hit me, I admit defeat. Are you trying to kill me, you bastard?" John released the restraints and sat on the ground with Robson. He was really strong, worthy of being a professional hunter. Both strength and skill were crushed. He originally wanted to ask for advice on an ability, but looking at Robson's annoying face, John gave up. 30 years east of the river, 30 years west of the river, don't bully the young and poor. When I get Red King and Platinum Star, I'll make you kneel and call me daddy. John found that the gold coins displayed by the system had increased again. The last time he fought Jackman, the gold coins increased by a large amount, but this battle was lost by John, but there were still gold coins, but very few. But there was no distance to fight those little brats. Maybe they were too weak and the system was too lazy to give them, or maybe there was only a reward for fighting against non-users. 5 minutes later, John smiled with bruises all over his face. Sure enough, there's a bug. I'm going to be invincible. Next year, I'm going to dominate the world. Hit me again, Robson. No, you're so perverted. Little brother, could it be that you can't do it? John filled up the taunt points. MD, you're a psychopath. This is the first time I've heard such a perverted request. John got a beating from a social person as he wished. John found that Robson could be brushed many times. Each time he lost, he would be rewarded with a certain amount of gold coins. 5 minutes of battle was worth a week of daily tasks. Take the most poisonous beating and become the strongest person. John looked at Robson like a gold coin. 10 minutes later, don't hit me, don't hit me. John found that one person seemed to only be able to brush 3 times a day. Later, Robson was venting his anger. John returned home. A paper-pasted spirit tablet leaned against the wall. In front of the spirit tablet, there were 2 fruit plates arranged symmetrically on the left and right. Although they were called fruit plates, there were only apples, and they were still green apples. In the middle was a smaller bowl filled with 2 tails of pig head meat. If you look closely, you can see that the paper-pasted spirit tablet is filled with the names of gods. All the gods that John knew, both east and west, can be found on the spirit tablet. Dozens of gods' names are squeezed onto this small spirit tablet. John knelt in front of the spirit tablet and sincerely recited the eulogy. There is pig head meat for those who eat meat, and apples for those who eat vegetarian food. Don't fight, don't grab. Poor gods and Buddhas would definitely beat John to death if they were there. What do you mean by fighting and grabbing? Just because you put the Jade Emperor and Jehovah together, no one will bless you. Single draw creates miracles, whether it's European or not depends on this one move. In the past, John was a staunch materialist and didn't really believe in the existence of gods. Later, he saw the abbot of a century-old ancient temple driving a Rolls-Royce to pick up girls. John's faith collapsed, and the cynical John stuffed chewing gum wrappers into the merit donation box every year. Then he transmigrated, but John still didn't change his ways and wrote even materialism on the spirit tablet. John was overjoyed. Jehovah, the Jade Emperor, Buddha, and Marx, these 4 people must bless him to get platinum star. John couldn't wait to open the card. A black figure gradually revealed its dignity. Damn, how could it be him? Chapter 10. A silver-white figure appeared, strong and powerful, with 2 pink hearts drawn on its chest and a terrifying red light emanating from its eyes. This trash game is ruining my youth. The cold sweat trickled down John's excited face. He silently threw the spirit tablet of the god he had been worshipping into the trash can and wiped the apple he had just placed on the plate to worship the god, stuffing it into his mouth. As expected, praying to gods is not as good as relying on oneself. Looking at the stand's introduction, John felt despair. Adam is a stand from the 9 Glory Gods group. It appears during the journey of the 3 Jos to defeat Dio. It is also one of the last stand users guarding Dio's side. To be so valued by Dio, it should be a ruthless character. Adam is a strategic stand, with stats of 1B, 1C, and 4DS. Looking at the destructive power of D, John's own strength is close to V. You're giving me a D? Trash stand. An average adult is D, and only boxers or something have C. Among stands, it's the worst of the worst. That stack of fake muscles doesn't even have decent durability. However, Adam does have special abilities. It can simply read minds, but only answer with yes or no. It also comes with gaming talent. With Adam, teammates will never send you little stars again. Adam is a godsend for those with clumsy hands. Completing the Dark Souls series is no longer a dream. Turning grief and indignation into strength, John turned on his computer and started caring for the physical and mental health of teenagers. How can kids these days be so bad? Completely unaware that he was also a noob before obtaining Adam, John tried to fill the boredom in his heart with victories in the game. After easily defeating opponents who were once evenly matched, he suddenly felt bored. Life is truly lonely as snow. John successfully discouraged a dozen newbies and went to bed contentedly. As night fell, the city did not fall into silence. Countless lights illuminated the city. Night was the time for young people to vent their inner frustrations. In a coffee shop, Robson sat opposite a woman. Can it be confirmed? Yes, Jackman was indeed killed by a kid. As he spoke, Robson gave the woman John's photo and a profile. Then, he started drinking his coffee. John Belasilievich, interesting. The woman looked at John's photo and smiled slightly, looking very cute. Do you know him? No, I don't know him. This kid is very talented. Although he rejected my invitation, he will definitely become a hunter in a few years. Oh, you're so confident in him. I almost lost. Robson pushed the empty coffee cup. Sarah looked out the window at the noisy crowd. If we investigate like this, I'm afraid he won't have a peaceful life. Don't worry, he's not a man who can be easily killed. My name is Capon, I have a house, a single apartment in the suburbs, and a car, with 25 years of car loan left, all I need is a girlfriend. People who know me respectfully call me Mr. Capon. As a glorious people's teacher, I am responsible and conscientious. It can be said that it is my spirit of responsibility that has led to their current achievements. But now I'm in a bad mood. There is a troublemaker student in the class who either sleeps or stares blankly during class. Although his grades are good, he also makes me very sad. My most valued student is always suppressed by him. If he works hard, it's okay, but this bastard never studies. Today, the second best student in the class, as an outstanding student, shared his learning experience on the podium. I couldn't bear it anymore. This bastard actually laughed. He doesn't respect his classmates at all, so John was asked to leave the classroom. I'm John, and today I'm taking a boring class as usual. Because I just took an exam, there will always be a few outstanding students who are invited by the homeroom teacher to share their learning experiences on stage. I am very honored to stand on this podium today to share my learning experience. Well, a standard opening, John nodded. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Capon for his earnest teaching. A very ordinary beginning, every award winner must first thank something or someone when they come on stage. No. Adam can read minds. Adam's voice is full of passion, and the speaker is also full of passion. Every time the speaker says a sentence, Adam will say no. John was trying his best to hold back his laughter, his whole face stiff and flushed. It is his selfless dedication. Gah! 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 Someone asked with concern, John, are you okay? John covered his mouth, no, I'm fine. John started coughing violently. It's all your own efforts, how dare I take the credit? Finally, it was time for the homeroom teacher to summarize. Mr. Capon waved his hand with a humble face. His face was full of smiles, and it could be seen that he was still very satisfied with this flattery. But today, a discordant figure appeared. Hearing Adam say no, the 40-something Mediterranean Capon was actually at Sundara. He said he didn't dare to take the credit, but he thought so in his heart. Pfft, ha 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 ha! John was defeated and couldn't help but laugh. Then John spent the day in the hallway. The world is going downhill, and people's hearts are not what they used to be. John didn't dare to use Adam in class anymore. A man in a grey coat slowly walked over from the school gate. He was wearing sunglasses, black gloves, and a black bowler hat, looking like a gangster boss from the last century. He walked straight towards John. John felt a sense of unease and summoned Adam. He looked at the man warily. The man seemed to not see Adam at all. John breathed a sigh of relief. Stand users can see stands, and if he can't see it, it means he's not a stand user. Well, maybe he's just an ordinary person. I've been suspicious lately, could it be that I killed someone and have psychological problems? John lost interest and turned to look at the birds in the tree next to him. The man took out a grenade from his pocket, die, sinful bloodline. The man threw the grenade at John. John's pupils shrank and he summoned Stone Free, dodging the grenade with one kick. Bang, boom, the grenade exploded. John used Stone Free to protect himself and didn't suffer much damage. But the wall of the classroom was blown down, and shrapnel from the grenade hit several people. They fell to the ground, their lives unknown. I am Capon, an ordinary middle school teacher. A grey-clad terrorist attacked the school. What to do? This is the first time I've encountered this in my dozen years of teaching. The grey-clad man took out another grenade from his pocket and threw it at John. Damn! Although John is a bastard, he is still my student. Without thinking much, I ran over and stood in front of John. How ridiculous, I'm over 40 years old and don't even have a girlfriend. I was also ridiculed by John today, but now I should be considered a qualified teacher, right? Tears and snot flowed out, damn it, I'm still young. I am John Belasilovuk, what exactly is going on with that person? How could he not react at all when I summoned him? What deep schemes? John saw the classmates lying on the ground bleeding, countless cries shook the sky, but John didn't hear it. John's world seemed to have been muted. Bastard, another grenade flew over. John was sure that this person was here for me, John was ready to fight back. Capon suddenly rushed over and stood in front of me. John was moved. Bastard, get ready to be punished. Extendable string fist. Stone Free's arm turned into a string, and the fist was launched like a flail. The high-speed fist made contact with the grenade, causing a huge explosion. John could have dodged the grenade without injury, but Capon would have died. The skin on John's fist burst open, and blood spurted out and flowed to the ground. The man took out a pistol and started shooting at John. John rushed up with Stone Free. Stone Free was not fully formed yet. Stone Free can't stop some guns with high rates of fire, but pistols are okay. Ora 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 ora. Stone Free frantically punched, deflecting all the bullets. You monster! The man looked resentful. It's enough, want to know why? Because you've already entered my range. John was uncontrollably angry. Ora 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 ora. The terrorist could no longer get up. My name is Raphael Baca, I used to be a shareholder in an ordinary small company. I had a happy family, a fairly beautiful wife, and an 8-year-old son. A gangster wanted to buy the shares in my hand at a low price. I didn't agree. The next day, my parents, wife, and children all died. I swore I would get revenge. The boss of that gang had many bodyguards around him, and I couldn't get close. That day, Raphael was already dead as a person, leaving only a revenge machine. When God closes a door, he opens a window. I found the school of that gangster's son in the black market. Raphael bought guns and grenades from the black market at a high price. Raphael kissed a family portrait and hid the photo in his chest before walking into the school. That person was indeed the bloodline of the devil. Grenades couldn't kill him, and bullets were also deflected. What a pity, Ajahn, I couldn't avenge you. Accompanied by Ora Ora Ora. Raphael lost consciousness. Chapter 11. Robson produced a warrant and dismissed the surrounding police officers, requesting a private conversation with John. Inside the police station, John and Robson sat facing each other. We meet again, Robson said, looking at John. The terrorist attack resulted in 2 deaths and 5 injuries, but the police haven't yet discovered that the man was looking for you. John's face was gloomy. I didn't kill Boren, but Boren died because of me. Although John had little interaction with these classmates, they died because of him, and John felt very guilty. Jackman's accomplice? John asked. No, Jackman was a lone wolf. This time, the person who came to kill you was an ordinary person. Your father is a gangster and has many enemies. Your identity was exposed during the Jackman incident, and your enemies have come looking for you, Robson said, lighting a cigarette. I didn't expect an ordinary person to assassinate me. After fighting with Jackman and Robson, he looked down on ordinary people who couldn't use Nen. But Raphael, this ordinary person, gave John a rude awakening. Underestimating ordinary people can lead to death. My eyes were blinded by the dramatically increased power. I was too arrogant after all, John reflected. If you don't leave, they may take more actions. We will do our best to protect your family, but manpower is limited. So, what is your answer? Robson said slowly, looking at John. Currently, they haven't found the butler and his wife, which is a stroke of luck. I understand, John nodded, a wry smile forming on his face. This could be considered being forced into a corner. Actually, being a hunter is pretty good. You can also learn them to become stronger, and there are many people grinding for gold coins, John constantly consoled himself. Why are you helping me? Perhaps it's a love for talent. Robson turned his head and revealed an awkward smile. Thank goodness he's not after my beauty, John breathed a sigh of relief. Admiring philosophy doesn't mean wanting to be fa. John was released on bail that day. These ships are usually driven by staff members of the association, with the purpose of testing the examinees' qualities. Because it was a bit late, the regular tickets were sold out. John got a ticket from a scalper at a high price. Scalper tickets are really expensive. Fortunately, I'm mostly smart as hell, John secretly used Stone Free to steal the money back and even made a profit from the scalper. As soon as John passed the ticket check and boarded the ship, he summoned him, asking the captain for information. Are you staff members of the association going to the venue? What are you talking about? We just take examinees here every year, the captain said impatiently. No. John also gathered some information. Speaking of which, that captain's acting skills were already max, right? How terrifying, if it weren't for Adam, he would have almost believed it. Is this the ship to the exam venue? Kid, are you annoying? Of course, it is. Don't bother me. No. Adam answered ominously behind John. This isn't the bus to the kindergarten. I want to get off, you black-hearted drivers. TMD, what a waste of my feelings, and a waste of money. Fortunately, I'm smart, no, I don't seem to have paid, and I even made a lot of money. John made a water-style graceful entry into the water and swam back. But how to get to the exam venue? John fell into deep thought. John wandered aimlessly around the port market. With the hunter exam approaching, things like laxatives, pistols, and swords were selling very well. At this time, a kind-looking chubby blue figure stood at the entrance of a laxative shop. This wasn't the robot who loved to eat dorayaki. He had brown hair and a circle of stubble around his mouth. He was the good old man of the hunter exam, Tonpa. What a lovely person he was, John almost choked up. As long as he followed Tonpa, the preliminary examination would definitely be passed. John decided to follow Tonpa. Who is following me? Tonpa turned his head vigilantly but didn't find anyone. Which friend, please come out and meet me, Tonpa clasped his hands, looking heroic. Humph, I'm not a newbie, trying to scare me. Then I'll have to find him myself, Tonpa said, walking straight towards the corner where John was hiding. John walked out of the corner, greatly demoralized. His first attempt at stealth was discovered so quickly, greatly damaging John's enthusiasm. Looking at how other comics do stealth, hiding their aura, but how can you hide your aura? Mang AKAs get out of here. When Tonpa saw that it was a child, he relaxed slightly. What kind of person was Tonpa? Even if it was a child, Tonpa wouldn't let his guard down. Little friend, what's your name? Tonpa deserved his title as an acting emperor. He instantly seemed like a different person, his aura completely changed. Joseph Joestar, you can call me Jojo, I'm here to take the hunter exam, but I can't find the venue. John used the name of a pervert without any psychological burden. John pretended to be an easy-to-bully newbie. What a coincidence, my name is Tonpa, I've been taking the hunter exam for 30 times since I was 10 years old. Little friend, following me is no problem, Tonpa patted his chest and assured John. Okay, I'm counting on you, senior. I believe you my ass, you old bastard is very bad, if I believe you, my bones won't be found next year. John was still very happy, getting on Tonpa's ship. The preliminary round should be no problem. He chatted with Tonpa without any serious topics. Tonpa was also very happy, another newbie to trick. This kid is using me, Tonpa, knew it from the beginning. Tonpa was overjoyed at the thought of tricking a newbie. The two acting emperors smiled happily, both thinking they had seen through the other. I've got you in my trap, trash. Chapter 12. A blonde, green-eyed young man sat alone in a small kayak, watching the people around him fight without any expression. John thought to himself, this is troublesome, this exam is probably doomed. Among the phantom troop, only he had a hunter license, Hisoka joined later, and he didn't expect it to be this year. The newcomer was none other than Finks of the phantom troop, a manipulator-type non-user, and the only member of the troop with a hunter license. He was skilled at exploring and analyzing information and making decisions, serving as an auxiliary member of the troop. Although he was considered an auxiliary, Finks was not weak. As long as he was willing to stab himself, he could gain strength comparable to Yuvajin and Nobunaga in a short period. Moreover, it was a fight to the death. Finks seemed to notice John's gaze and turned to look at him as well. Hey, someone's watching me. He saw it was a kid, with a large amount of chaotic energy radiating from his body. He seemed to possess great strength but didn't seem like someone who could use nin. So, he stopped paying attention to John. John also breathed a sigh of relief. Being targeted by the troop was not a good thing. Finks took out a cartoon-style phone, which was his nin ability, puppet phone. Finks stood quietly on the boat without moving. Suddenly, his hand twitched, and a silver ray flew out of his hand and disappeared into the sea. It was an antenna, John knew. 5 seconds later, a shark over 2 meters long surfaced from the water, and Finks leaped onto the shark's back. Oh, amazing, that person actually tamed a shark. How did he do that? The small fries discussed. Many people had already opened fire, but it was useless. Those guns were just hunting rifles and some high imitation guns, unable to penetrate Finks' physical defense. Watching Finks' powerful physique, John was silent. Is this the benefit of being an user? Jealousy is causing me to undergo spinodal decomposition. Are they blind? Didn't they see the antenna on that shark's head? Oh, that's right, these people can't see nin abilities. John suddenly thought of something and slapped himself twice. Ordinary people can't see stands either. Then why am I bothering with this? I should just secretly mess up their guns. I suddenly feel like an idiot. Ripple energy is very comprehensive, and with stone free, I can completely play the role of a manipulator type non-user. John bit his hand, and blood flowed from the wound, dripping into the sea. In just a few seconds, countless shadows gathered towards John. John naturally didn't dare to put his hand into the sea, but ripple energy control of creatures requires direct contact. So, John resolutely summoned Stone Free, and countless threads wrapped around several sharks. With Stone Free guarding his back, these hunting rifles couldn't hurt John either. John ran all the way without getting hurt. There was a rest stop on the island, providing food and lodging. As soon as John landed on the island, he saw a helicopter in the sky, and several people jumped directly from the plane. MMP, I'm fighting wits and courage with over 100 people, and you're telling me there's a direct bus. Besides Tonpa and Finks, there wasn't a single familiar face on the field. Joseph, I didn't expect you to come up too. I'm sorry about what happened earlier, brother. The situation forced me. Come, have a can of drink to cool down. Tonpa said apologetically, taking out an unopened bottle of orange juice from his pocket. John got angry as soon as he saw Tonpa. We agreed to be each other's angels. He was going to buy teammates first. John was very upset. John never takes revenge overnight. And since he used the name Joseph, anyone who dares to trick Joseph must die. Kars was sent to space to be an astronaut, and Caesar only pranked Joseph, but ultimately couldn't escape death. Empress only bit his arm and died from exploding, and the centenarian sucked a mouthful of blood and turned to ashes. How terrifying! John politely refused Tonpa, and Tonpa wasn't discouraged and went to try medicine on other newbies. Tonpa had long given up confidence in passing the hunter exam, and what supported him in taking the exam was just the pleasure of tricking newbies. John decided to rescue the misguided newbies, and evil thoughts suddenly arose in his heart. A thin line appeared from John's leg, traveling along the ground and climbing onto Tonpa's body. Because it was a line shape, it could conduct over a long distance. This way, he wouldn't be suspected for the time being. The line was so long that it would have lost its attack power, but it was enough to conduct ripple. Watching the talkative Tonpa, John grinned. Ripple overdrive. A trace of golden lightning flowed along the silk thread and entered Tonpa's body. Then, he used Stone Free to lock all the doors of the toilet. Tonpa-san, this is the last thing I can do for you. I am Tonpa, nicknamed the Newbie Crusher. I have been participating in the hunter exam since I was 10 years old. I still haven't passed it now. Yesterday I met a newbie, who looked like a genius, and I hate geniuses the most. Today, the look of despair on the newbie's face after being abandoned was exactly what I craved. Although it was somewhat different from the way I designed him to leave, I was still very happy. I didn't expect that the newbie had actually come to the island, but after experiencing betrayal, it was difficult for me to strike. Fortunately, there were other newbies to relieve my boredom. Hey, why is my body out of control? When Ripple entered Tonpa's body, Tonpa was giving laxative drinks to the newbies. Mr. Tonpa looked at his hand opening the drink in horror. Yabe! Tonpa shouted, but it was useless. Tonpa said no with his mouth, but his body was very honest. The drink was drunk in one gulp, and Mr. Tonpa seemed to have lost his soul, silently walking towards the toilet. He left quietly, just as he came quietly, waving his hand to find that the toilet door would not open. After a fruitless attempt, Tonpa lost his soul and collapsed on the ground, playing a chapter with his butt. Sizzle. His pants were dyed yellow, and the sound of farts and Mr. Tonpa's groans harmonized into an earth-shattering sound. The surrounding area was filled with poisonous gas, achieving a cleanup effect, with no one within 200 meters. As expected of the hunter exam, I didn't expect there to be such powerful people. A newbie said. Hey, what do you think the hunter exam is? That's just an individual case, John said in his heart. In order to give the newbie an unforgettable memory, Tonpa added a strong laxative, and he wouldn't want to get up from the toilet for 3 days. Unexpectedly, the newbie hadn't enjoyed it yet, and he used it first. A middle-aged man in his 40s, his hair is estimated to be in wash-cut blow barber shop, the visual effect is super strong. The yellow and red scattered hairstyle reveals the nobility of Azama's special aristocracy. I saw him frown, his hand covering his mouth and nose. Who is shitting here? Is there no quality? Mr. Tonpa, who was already dehydrated from diarrhea, was once again hit and passed out. Poor Mr. Tonpa, it is estimated that he has already produced a shadow, and he may not dare to participate in the hunter exam. Which person in this class will look up to him? Think about him bragging to the later newbies, and then a person who knows the details will jump out. I have been participating in the hunter exam since I was 10 years old. You shit in public and don't even take off your pants. I have participated in dozens of exams. You shit in public. How can you call Tonpa mix? He is already socially dead. The examiner glanced at Tonpa with disgust and said, "Candidates, you have passed the preliminary round of the hunter exam. Your passing the first stage means you have enough strength and wisdom, but it's all useless. I'm going to kick out half of you." Ding, trigger task to obtain a license. The system, which had been silent for a long time, finally came back. Chapter 13. The evening breeze gently rustled the fallen leaves, and the afterglow of the setting sun shone on John's back, highlighting his loneliness. John sat despairingly on a rock, followed by a pitiful little girl with short brown hair. He shouldn't call him that. That's right, the person John painstakingly brought back was a man. He said he was a man named Lindsay. John, of course, didn't believe it. How could someone so cute be a boy? These cross-dressing dramas have been done to death on TV. How could John fall for that? That is until he pulled out, the thing I wanted to pull out. How should I put it? As expected, someone this cute is a boy. This beast even has a voice changer, so you can't tell he's a boy at all. The most despairing thing is that his thing is even bigger than yours. John was despairing about this world. Speaking of which, the old thief Togashi is also a bastard who insists on drawing women but saying they're men. Kurapika is a perfectly good girl, and the official setting is also female. In this world full of malice, picking up girls is also a skill. Thank you, Lindsay said softly. Half of the people who come to this island arrive by helicopter, and Lindsay is one of them. His dream is to become a medical disease hunter. Just now, he discovered a herb, but the woman who fell down thought Lindsay had found a zistan flower. After eating some dry food, John used stone free to make a warning line and went to sleep hastily. The next day, John and Lindsay wandered aimlessly in the forest. Damn it, we can't find the zistan flower by searching like this. Are you looking for the zistan flower? Lindsay asked curiously. I haven't found the zistan flower yet. I'll be eliminated, John replied to Lindsay perfunctorily. I know where there are zistan flowers, Lindsay replied. Why didn't you say so earlier? Damn it, I've been looking for so long, and you only tell me now. You didn't ask. Very well, this reason is very powerful. Barlow Island is rich in products and has many unique terrains and landforms. But overall, it's still very similar to a tropical rainforest climate. Insects are rampant in the forest. John was covered in bites after only leaving the campfire for a short while. After traveling quickly for an hour, John arrived at a swamp in the forest, led by Lindsay. The surroundings of the lake were full of broken trees, as well as some charred wood after a bonfire, and several discarded backpacks. There was a small lawn in the heart of the lake. Through the portable telescope Lindsay brought, you could see several zistan flowers on the lawn. However, the zistan flowers were separated from John by nearly 40 to 50 meters of swamp. Falling in would directly declare the exam a failure. John walked to the ruins to observe. This should be from the same batch of examinees. John found Tom's blue jacket. The zistan flowers in the heart of the lake had not been picked, which meant that Tom and the others had not obtained the flowers. John scouted the surroundings and found no traces of battle. John had 3 guesses: they encountered an enemy and were eliminated early. They thought they couldn't get these flowers, so they left early. They all died here. The first possibility, to silently eliminate them, and completely wipe out Tom's group holding machine guns, should only be possible by Crollo and John. Whether it's Nin abilities or stands, ordinary people can't see them. But if it was Crollo, he would definitely be able to take the flowers in the heart of the lake. Of course, it is also possible that other people used unconventional methods such as poisoning. The second possibility is the most likely. The last possibility is unlikely. What kind of power could instantly kill 3 adults holding firearms without leaving any traces of a gun battle? Of course, it is also possible that Tom overestimated himself and challenged the swamp, and failed. Looking at this swamp, John was still a little panicked. If the third guess was true, then the danger was very likely to come from the swamp. Just as John was speculating, a black shadow emerged from the lake. Whoa, what a big snake head! The snake was grey-black all over, and the snake's head alone was about the same size as John. The total length was estimated to be 6 or 7 meters. It was impossible to tell what kind it was. Its golden pupils stared at John. This was definitely a ruthless character. Judging by its size, John knew that another hard fight was coming. Stone Free appeared behind him, and countless threads had already wrapped around a tree 10 meters away, ready to run away at any time. Is this the thing that killed Tom and the others? It's really scary. John was actually very scared. After all, he had never seen such a big snake in his previous life or now. Fortunately, the snake didn't move, maybe because Tom had filled it up yesterday. The snake stretched its head straight out of the water 2 meters high. Under John's wary gaze, the snake seemed to instantly lose its vitality and fell motionless in front of John. John swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Following the snake's body, John saw a scene he would never forget. The water at the junction of land and water was dyed blood red, and there was a huge bite mark on the part floating on the water, almost completely cutting off the snake's body. It was killed in one bite. John realized something, picked up Lindsay and fully pulled the Stone Free's thread, retreating to the tree where the thread was tied. A second later, a completely red crocodile emerged from the water. Its golden vertical pupils were full of pressure, and there was not a single scar on its 10-meter-long body. Perhaps this could no longer be called a crocodile. With such a large size and 8 strong legs, it didn't look like a normal creature at all. It was definitely a fantasy species. Lindsay was already terrified, her face stiff and her whole body trembling. But after hearing John's words, she still ran wildly as if her life depended on it. John was also preparing to evacuate. Crack, the branch broke. The crocodile, which was eating, raised its head and saw John not far away. Fuck, John's hands trembled uncontrollably, this was instinctive fear. Calm down, John adjusted his breathing. The crocodile also turned its body towards John. Suddenly, the crocodile's entire body shot out like a cannonball in a strange posture. Almost instantly, the crocodile flew in front of John, and he could clearly smell the bloody smell in the crocodile's mouth. Chapter 14. John had already prepared one hand to grab a tree in the distance, and with the other arm he held Lindsay, shooting out like Spider-Man. His timing was perfect. Almost the exact moment the jaws snapped shut, John escaped the crocodile's mouth. Quite a breath. Although the barrow crocodile didn't bite John, the barrel leeches on its tongue splattered onto John along with the saliva. Lindsay, however, only got a few. MMP, I feel like you're targeting me, fat tiger. The barrow crocodile missed its attack and only stopped after crashing through several giant trees. Hiss! What terrifying power! I finally understand where these broken trees came from. This level of power, even the so-called invincible platinum star would have to temporarily avoid. But there is also good news, the barrow crocodile's agility is not high. It can't stop on its own after that kind of charging bite, it needs the resistance of trees to stop. John threw Lindsay into the mud more than 10 meters away. Get out of here. Without Lindsay as a burden, John was confident he could deal with it. My arm feels hot. John looked and saw several large leeches attached to his arm. John slapped the leeches off his arm, and blood spurted from the wounds. Originally, you had to use salt to deal with barrel leeches, directly tearing them off would damage the skin, but there was no time to care about that now. The barrow crocodile seemed to have smelled John's blood and drooled. John transformed most of his body into threads. Come on, crocodile. A person's abilities have limits, unless they transcend humanity. John struck a Jojo pose. So I. Crap. The barrow crocodile indicated that it didn't understand what you were saying and attacked you. The barrow crocodile used the same trick again, and it felt the same. It's coming again. John's body elongated from the waist up and drifted to the side, but his lower body didn't move. John dodged the attack in a strange posture. Seeing John's dodging posture, the barrow crocodile's brain couldn't process it at all. So the barrow crocodile decided to just charge straight ahead, relying on its thick skin and hard head. Are you even going to let me show off? I haven't finished talking yet. John went around to the side of the crocodile. This move imitates Orochimaru from Naruto. Orochimaru has a kind of soft body modification, where the body can be twisted at will. Soft body modification not only increases physical attack resistance but also allows you to attack enemies from a strange angle. It is a very practical trick, but it is very unsightly. John is not a person who is particular about small things, survival is fundamental. Stone Free can turn the body into threads and can completely imitate Orochimaru's fighting style. Suji still hasn't fully explored the potential of Stone Free. John went around to the side of the barrow crocodile, Gomu no Gatling. This is another shameless plagiarism, using Stone Free's elongated fist to simulate Luffy's ability. Ora 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 ora. Rain like fists poured down on the barrow crocodile. So hard, was John's first thought. An adult Stone Free might be able to break its defense, but now its destructive power is less than a. Even Platinum Star would have to put in some effort to break the barrow crocodile's crocodile skin defense. Crap, John jumped back 2 steps. The barrow crocodile began to turn its head. Halfway through the turn, the barrow crocodile suddenly opened its mouth and stopped moving. What's going on? A chill surged into his heart, and the sound of air tearing came from behind. The barrow crocodile swung its strong tail through the air. The tail almost flew along the ground, and it was only 30 centimeters away from Barrow. There was no way to dodge, John judged in an instant. John's whole body began to turn into white threads, and the tail arrived in an instant. Boom, John was knocked away like a piece of paper. John crossed his arms in front of his head in the air, and his knees curled up to accelerate once again. The barrow crocodile, which had calculated the time well, suddenly pounced and missed. This is my escape route. John bullied the barrow crocodile for not understanding physics. The power of knowledge is great. Didn't you see that Kars once defeated Ryu, and now he is still a satellite in the sky? Pfft, John spat out a mouthful of blood. Although most of his body was turned into threads, he still suffered considerable internal injuries. The crocodile's body suddenly rolled over, Masaka. John realized it, but it was too late. John also rolled over with the barrow crocodile, and John was crushed and disoriented, falling to the ground. When crocodiles hunt animals, sometimes they can't bite off the prey's flesh in one bite, so they will spin wildly to make the prey faint. On the African savanna, countless antelopes and wildebeest have died from crocodiles' spinning bite. Spinning can be said to be a crocodile's innate skill, and it is completely unaffected by spinning. While John was dazed, one of the crocodile's feet pressed on John's waist. John turned his lower body into threads to escape, but the crocodile's body still pressed down. Stone Free attacked the barrow crocodile's belly with all its strength. Damn it, I finally understand Jotaro's pain, but the difference is that when Jotaro was eating roll at Takaizawa, Platinum Star had both power and speed at A, and John's low-profile Stone Free was far inferior to the almost fully equipped Platinum Star at that time. Moreover, the barrow crocodile is heavier than a road roller, and John doesn't know how to smash, wyyy. A sure death, John mostly escaped, but his foot was pressed by the crocodile. Fortunately, the foot had turned into threads and was not seriously injured. But John's actions were also restricted. Damn it, why is my second stand-item, it would be nice to have Grateful Dead. John has the ripple breathing technique, and his physical strength is among the best among professional hunters except for enhancement type non users. But it must be inferior to the barrow crocodile, which is a beast. If it continues to consume, he will surely die. No, I have to think of a way. John decided to go all out and fight the barrow crocodile. The crocodile's entire body was lying down. It would definitely be a dead end underneath. John's lower body turned into threads and his upper body appeared beside the crocodile like Aladdin's lamp spirit. Ora 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 ora. The barrow crocodile remained unmoved. Crap, ora 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 ora. Is this a dead end? Hat. Chapter 15. Bang. That was the sound of a gun. John felt a surge of confidence. If someone was drawing the fire, maybe he could slip away, John thought. John looked towards the source of the sound, and saw someone he never expected, Lindsay Pardon. The cross-dressing man, the coward who couldn't move in front of the barrow crocodile. He was covered in mud, and fresh blood dripped from the leech bite wounds he'd just cleaned on his arm. The gun was seized from that woman yesterday. John had given it to Lindsay, figuring that if they fought, Lindsay would provide ranged fire support. Of course, that was just John's way of speaking. In the hunter exam, where non abilities were rare, unseen stands were better for ambushes. Since he didn't need it himself, John gave the gun to Lindsay based on the principle of making use of trash, figuring Lindsay wouldn't shoot him anyway. He never expected. My name is Lindsay Pardon. I am 13 years old and come from your new city. The person I admire most is Cheadle Yorkshire, note, ailment hunter, legal scholar, one of the Zodiacs, dog, and the future chairman of the Hunter Association in the Dark Continent Expedition. So my dream is to become a medical hunter. To achieve my dream, I participated in the hunter exam. I'm actually a little nervous. Fortunately, I came to Barrow Island by helicopter and eliminated tens of thousands of people. He gave me the seized gun and asked me to cover him. This is the first time I have been entrusted with such an important task, the first time someone has trusted me so much. I am so touched. As expected, Joseph is a breath of fresh air in the scheming hunter exam. Following Joseph might really allow me to pass the exam. Today, I brought Joseph to a swamp. I knew there were cistus flowers here yesterday, but I found a lot of large carnivore corpses around. It was really weird. And I can't get through the swamp either. But if it's Joseph, he might really be able to do it. The woman with the gun was taken down in one go. Joseph was barehanded. How is it possible? How could there be such a terrifying monster? I'm doomed. My life ends here. Joseph's entire hand flew out. As expected, Joseph is not human. Joseph saved me again. I am dragging Joseph down. This battle is really beyond my ability to intervene. Lindsay watched John, with his snake-like movements, fight the Barrow crocodile. Lindsay rolled twice in the mud, preparing to run away. Ora 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 ora. Joseph kept throwing punches, the speed so high that only after images could be seen. But Joseph's attacks were completely useless. Damn it, I'm still a little unwilling to leave like this, now that I've come this far. This is the first time I've been trusted by someone. Lindsay turned back. He didn't want to betray that trust. Boom. Half of Joseph's body was pressed under the crocodile. Da-da-da. Lindsay opened fire. Hey, look over here. Lindsay's legs were shaking, snot mixing with mud. I'm going to die, I'm going to die. The Barrow crocodile's eyes turned over. The crocodile slowly got up, as expected, a beast that had been provoked immediately forgot about John. Lie down quickly, Lindsay. John shouted at Lindsay. Lindsay immediately fell to the ground and rolled twice to the side. The crocodile flew past Lindsay. Although Lindsay didn't have John's stone-free's strong observational skills, Lindsay wasn't an idiot either. The Barrow crocodile's attack methods were actually very simple. As long as you watched it a few times, you could guess it. John also escaped. But his foot was still injured. It was still a bit difficult to deal with the Barrow crocodile. Lindsay held a machine gun and madly fired, maxing out its taunt value. Even John couldn't do that. Masaka, crocodiles also like this, a big Dio girl. John touched his face. He wasn't ugly either. At least he was a Shota. No, this crocodile is undoubtedly female. If it were male, John would have broken off its you-know-what long ago. John doesn't care about chivalry. The Barrow crocodile wasn't stupid either. Realizing that Lindsay didn't have John's agility, the Barrow crocodile could completely rely on its size to suppress Lindsay. The Barrow crocodile stopped using charging skills and instead chased after Lindsay, biting wildly. John supported himself and stood up. John summoned Stone Free and pulled Lindsay over. Lindsay escaped from the crocodile's mouth. Hey, Lindsay, why is that crocodile chasing you? John asked with a serious face. Eyes, that's its weakness. The eyelid's defense is relatively weak, but its eyelids are also very thick, and bullets can't penetrate them. Lindsay vigilantly stared at the Barrow crocodile. Crocodiles mainly rely on their eyes to hunt. As long as we can find a way to knock out its eyes, then we'll be safe. Eyes, wa kata, I understand, dot. John's face showed a smile. Thank you. I didn't expect you to be so useful. Give me the gun, and you run first. John snatched the gun from Lindsay and threw him into the distance. Come on, Barrow crocodile. John picked up the machine gun and sprayed wildly at the crocodile's eyes. John hadn't learned how to use a gun. But after a round of wild shooting, several bullets still hit the eyelids. The crocodile roared and charged over. It took the bait, John thought to himself. As soon as the crocodile came over, John threw away the gun. The gun's bullets would make the crocodile wary, so John didn't use the gun. No matter how strong the skin's defense was, the hardness of the eyeballs wouldn't change. John weaved around, summoned Stone Free, and unleashed a barrage of aura punches at the barrow crocodile's eyes. John was just taking advantage of the barrow crocodile's inability to see the stand to come up with a plan. Ripple contraction fist. Stone Free's fist flew out and hit the crocodile's other eye. The scarlet ripple immediately burned the unprotected crocodile eye. The barrow crocodile couldn't see John and went berserk in anger. "Lindsay, don't get hit, wait for me." John gathered the ripple at his feet. Stepping on the mud, he ran directly to the center of the lake, grabbed a cistus flower, and ran. "I'm not playing with you anymore, crocodile. This is my escape route." It's impossible to beat the crocodile, he just snatched the flower and slipped away. Chapter 16. The roaring crocodile didn't stop its rampage in the jungle. "Hey, Joseph, you're not human, are you?" Lindsay asked John. John rolled his eyes at Lindsay. "Who are you calling not human?" "I'm not Dio. I'm a purebred human." You just did something that a human couldn't do," Lindsay ignored John's retort, still unconvinced. "You know too much," John said without turning his head. "Sorry. If you can pass the hunter exam, someone will teach you a superpower called Nin. Then you'll understand. By the way, your idol, Kite, also has this power." Ding! Defeated Barrow Giant Crocodile, reward, 1,500 gold coins. A stand card costs 2,000, and a universal card costs 1,200. A universal card could be a stand card or an item card. Most item cards are useless, like the Genius Boy Narencia's practice book or Yasuke Higashikata's hair gel. Of course, there are also good things like the arrow, the Aya Stone, and the Stone Mask. These require a lot of luck. John received rewards for defeating the terrorists and the gun-wielding woman, 100 gold coins. Being defeated by Robson also earns 150-200 gold coins. Daily exercise only gives 50 gold coins. John has now saved enough gold coins, but he doesn't plan to draw now. Using Stone Free to connect the broken bones and then using Ripple Energy to heal, an injury that would originally take 2 months in the hospital is healed in a few hours. However, the wound bitten by the Barrow Leech is not easy to heal. To deal with Barrow Leeches, you should use salt. Tearing them off directly will enlarge the wound. The leech itself also releases an anticoagulant, making the wound difficult to heal. Even John, who possesses Ripple, spent some time. Lindsay's wound is even more troublesome. Although Lindsay's injury is not as severe as John's, her recovery ability is ultimately not as good as John's, who has Ripple Energy. Rolling around in the mud with the injury has caused some inflammation. Lindsay's goal was originally to become a medical hunter, so she can still handle these simple situations. John had no choice but to use Ripple to treat Lindsay's wound. After all, the bloody smell of the wound would still attract wild animals. Next is the time to divide the spoils. John took out the 3 cistus flowers he snatched from the lake island. John put the flowers on the ground and spread them out one by one. Well, there are 3 flowers, so even if John and Lindsay each take one, there will still be one left over. "Where are we going next?" Lindsay asked with curiosity. "Of course, we're handing the cistus flowers to the examiner," John said casually. "But the cistus flowers are only effective when they are mature, so only one is truly useful. Don't panic, watch my Ripple." John grabbed the 2 immature cistus flower buds, and golden fluorescence emanated from John's hands in the darkness, and a golden lightning injected into them. After receiving the golden lightning, these 2 flowers began to glow like John's hands. The flower buds gradually expanded, and the entire flower grew against common sense. It only took 3 seconds for the flower buds to mature. Lindsay was quite happy that she didn't have to continue risking her life to find flowers. "Aren't you curious? Would you tell me?" Lindsay perked up. "Of course not." Lindsay rolled her eyes at John's answer. "The morning sun shines in the forest. Because it is a primeval forest, there is no road here. Some of the soft grass is flattened. The sunlight shines on the trees, and the mottled shadows shine on the ground, complementing each other. It is already the morning of the 3rd day." John and Lindsay walked towards the location specified by the flamboyant examiner. Although it is autumn, it doesn't look like autumn at all. The trees are still green, and the sun is as scorching as summer. John, who has practiced Ripple, is fine, but Lindsay is already covered in sweat. But no one said they wanted to stop. On the one hand, they were very happy to have passed the preliminary selection. On the other hand, the hunter exam is too dangerous, and delay could lead to changes. The sooner they submit, the better. Although John and his party were happy, John did not relax his vigilance. He kept Stone-Free's listening wires on all the way, guarding against sneak attacks. There have already been 2 waves of attacks along the way, totaling 5 people. Because ordinary people can't see stands, this shameless setting, and no one knows none, it didn't take John much effort to deal with them. Dong 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 dong. John waved his hand to signal Lindsay to stop. Lindsay saw John's gesture and quickly released the safety of her gun, preparing to shoot at any time. There are 5, 6, 7 people ahead. We're in trouble. John looked solemn. If the few people ahead all have guns and are a team, John is afraid he will fall. After all, so many people firing at the same time can form a net of fire. For John, who is fragile, the threat of guns is still very great. If the people in front were all holding swords, John would have the confidence to fight. You stay here and don't move. I'll go scout the situation. John crouched down and slowly approached, relying on the bushes. The ground is covered in blood. According to the situation at the scene, there should have been a fierce gun battle here. The surrounding area is full of bullet craters. Looking forward, 6 strong men holding various machine guns formed a circle, seemingly protecting something. John followed their gaze and peeked. John's pupil shrank. It was Shulnark. He should be using Black Voice to control these people, making them his thugs. There's someone there, kill him. Shulnark pointed in the direction where John was hiding. Shulnark is an unuser, and John can't use Zetsu to hide from Shulnark's Gyo. 6 guns pointed at John in unison. John turned his whole body into strings and grabbed a nearby tree to escape directly. Of course, John couldn't run back and drag Lindsay into the melee, she would definitely die. Moreover, John wouldn't go so far as to pit such an honest person. Although those controlled goons are strong, John is at least trained in Ripple and is a stand user with superpowers, they can't catch up with John. John swung back and forth in the forest. Relying on the elasticity of the strings, John's trajectory was unpredictable. Interesting, I can still meet a natural non-user. I've decided to make you my puppet. Shulnark saw the goons chasing John, and the stone free that John used made Shulnark very curious. Although Shulnark is not good at speed, none of the members of the Phantom Troop are weak in terms of physical strength, it's just that there are stronger people among the strong. Shulnark instantly disappeared from the spot, and ordinary people could only see a trail of afterimages passing by. John has stone free and can clearly observe Shulnark's trajectory, but his body has no way to react and counterattack. Shulnark, holding his antenna, stabbed at John. The antenna suddenly pierced into John's unguarded body. Checkmate. Shulnark smiled. Chapter 17. The antenna had already been inserted into John's kidney. John was stunned by this sudden, high-speed assassination. Shulnark isn't a major combatant in the Phantom Troop, but his ability is very troublesome. No, it should be said that most manipulator-type non users are troublesome. Manipulator-type non abilities provide very little enhancement to the body, and most manipulator-type non users don't have powerful offensive means. However, manipulator-type non abilities are also the most headache-inducing because once successfully activated, they are almost unsolvable. No matter how amazing someone is, being stabbed means it's game over. Theoretically speaking, even the Chimera Ant King, who couldn't be killed instantly by the poor man's rose, would be finished if Shulnark stuck him. Of course, Shulnark absolutely cannot beat the Chimera Ant King. Shulnark's antenna might not even be able to penetrate the Chimera Ant King's skin. That automatic control mode is also very strong, capable of taking down division leader level opponents in a short amount of time. In a few years, when John's Stone Free is fully developed, he might be able to give it a try, but right now, it's definitely impossible. After inserting the antenna into John's body, Shulnark also jumped back a distance. A cell phone appeared out of thin air in his hand. Hunt down all the examinees except for me. Shulnark entered the command on the puppet phone. Because John practiced Ripple, in Shulnark's Gyo-enhanced vision, John's life energy was abundant and strong, and he could see stone free. Oh, this kid even has an beast, so his strength shouldn't be bad. I'll just control him. A sinister and powerful Nen was released from the phone. However, John didn't move. Hey? How is that possible? Shulnark was also stunned. He had never seen anyone who was completely unaffected by being stabbed with the antenna. John was also stunned. Why did he stab my kidney? What kind of grudge is this? I'm still a kid. Crap, am I going to become Shulnark's plaything? I'm so unwilling. Hey! Why isn't he using the puppet phone to control me? John couldn't figure it out. Shulnark was also a highly skilled NAN user. Realizing that the puppet phone couldn't control John, he threw 3 more antennas at John. John didn't dodge, using Stone Free to directly block them. John probably knew the reason. When John encounters danger, he instinctively turns his body into strings to reduce the damage. The puppet phone's antenna was inserted in the middle of the string, causing no harm to John himself. It could be said that John's Stone Free is Shulnark's nemesis. Almost all of Shulnark's abilities are countered by John. Shulnark knew that even though the automatic mode could easily kill John, he didn't dare to do so. The automatic mode is an unconscious move where it's either you die or I die, and using the automatic mode will leave him completely powerless. During the hunter exam, being completely powerless would probably mean death. I didn't expect this little brother to be so strong. How about we cooperate? Shulnark always had a smiling face, and you couldn't tell that he had just attacked John. As the strategist of the Phantom Troop, Shulnark is relatively calm. He is also one of the few people in the Phantom Troop's brainless muscleheads who can think calmly. Without knowing John's abilities, he didn't rashly attack. As for face, Shulnark, who was born in Meteor City, said, "Can face be eaten? As a sign of sincerity, I'll give you a Sistan flower. You can pass right now." Shulnark took off the Sistan flower pinned behind him and threw it to John. John took the Sistan flower and carefully checked it. There were no traps, it was genuine. Then he was very puzzled. He didn't believe that an opponent who had just been fighting to the death would be so kind. I, Joseph Joestar, like to say no to those who think they're so smart. John stared at Shulnark, preventing him from suddenly attacking. I already have enough Sistan flowers to pass, but I don't want to take such a long exam. As long as the first exam eliminates most of the examinees, we can reduce the exam process. Shulnark let go of his hands and looked sincere. John used him to test Shulnark's words, and they were all true. The proposal to cooperate with Shulnark was undeniably tempting. As long as Shulnark and John joined forces, no examinee would be a match for them. They could eliminate almost all of the examinees, and this exam would be stable. Moreover, with Shulnark and his tool people blocking the door, if John wanted to pass, he would either have to cooperate with Shulnark or kill Shulnark. John wasn't sure, and Shulnark wasn't sure either. Happy to cooperate. After a brief thought, John decided to engage in a backroom deal with Shulnark. Anyway, he wouldn't lose out no matter how he looked at it. I have a teammate behind me. I'll go get him. Shulnark nodded to show his understanding. After that, John called Lindsay over. Lindsay was very flustered when he heard that there were so many people here and they all had weapons. He cowered behind John, afraid to leave John. Shulnark thought that John's teammate was also an expert, but he didn't expect him to be like this. He was a little disappointed. Later, he seemed to have thought of something and looked at John in shock. Shulnark could tell at a glance that Lindsay was a boy. Thinking that John had such strength, he should have no problem finding a female examinee to team up with. But he found a cute boy instead. This was very telling. I didn't expect young people nowadays to like this kind of tune. Young people in the city don't like women anymore, but instead go looking for men, adding fuel to the fire. Some people are elementary school students on the surface, but they play very big behind the scenes. Moreover, John looked like the dominant one. Shulnark himself also had the looks of a pretty boy. Thinking of this, Shulnark's chrysanthemum tightened, and he moved away from John without leaving a trace. Shulnark looked at John, thinking in his heart, at such a young age, is that thing really useful? John felt Shulnark's gaze, it seemed to be on his little brother. Shulnark's evasive gaze made John feel a burst of fear. His chrysanthemum also tightened. Could it be that Shulnark is actually gay? He kept staring at me, and he used the puppet phone just now to turn me into a plaything. But the original work didn't mention it. John was puzzled. This is a real world, maybe Shulnark really has this kind of fetish, but old thief Togashi didn't draw it. After making up his mind, John secretly turned his head to look at Shulnark. Shulnark quickly shifted his gaze. John's old face turned red. Damn it, I didn't expect you, Shulnark, with your thick eyebrows and big eyes, to actually be interested in me. Shulnark looked at John and saw that he turned red after looking back at him. Sure enough, he's interested in me. Too dangerous, for the sake of my chrysanthemum, I have to kill him. Chapter 18. My name is Iwashiro Mizo Roku, from the land of the rising sun, the 17th generation successor of the sword saint Iwashiro Mitsumasa. I have been practicing swordsmanship since I was 5 years old, and it has been 28 years now. I will pass the hunter exam, I will revive the Iwashiro disintegration stream. Today, all of you will become souls under my sword. A deep voice echoed from the forest. John turned to look in that direction, and a middle-aged man with a face full of stubble came out of the forest wearing a brownish-red short-sleeved shirt. His left eye was tightly closed with a scar above it, and he had a single ponytail pointing to the sky. His face had a wild and unrestrained expression, and one hand rested on the hilt of his sword. He looked to be in his 50s or 60s. This expression, he seems to be a master. John thought to himself. This expression is like Yovajan's, another troublesome character. Shulnark was also very cautious. So that means you're only in your 30s? Lindsay asked blankly. Damn you, do you want to die? The swordsman was clearly exasperated. The figure gradually became clearer as the swordsman walked in front of John and his group, and fell silent. Oh dear, it seems I have no choice but to use that move. John also tensed up. John couldn't tell whether he was an user, and since he was tricked by a bomb last time, he no longer dared to underestimate non-users. Although he had never heard of the Iwashiro disintegration stream, he had the aura of a great swordsman, a Toril-style ponytail, and Zoro-like eye scar. Even Shulnark stood up. The swordsman suddenly roared, slammed one foot into the ground, and then vigorously lifted his foot. A cloud of dust kicked up, rushing towards John and his group. Everyone except John and Shulnark were injured by this sudden attack. Because everyone was on guard against Iwashiro Mizo Roku's ultimate move, their attention was focused on his sword. Most people couldn't open their eyes for a moment. Shulnark, relying on his extraordinary combat skills, understood his intention the moment Iwashiro Mizo Roku raised his leg, and casually blocked it. John didn't react in time, but he summoned Stone Free, which also blocked the sand and stones. Who would have thought that he was a swordsman on the surface, but in reality, his tricks were so insidious. Seeing that his attack was successful, Iwashiro Mizo Roku did not take the opportunity to attack John and his group. Iwashiro Mizo Roku turned around and ran without hesitation, very decisively, without any hesitation. Shulnark's prepared countermeasures were also useless. Wow, someone is actually imitating me, Joseph Joestar. Iwashiro Mizo Roku, didn't you aspire to become a sword saint? Have some shame. John didn't even have a chance to attack before Shulnark snatched the gun from a nearby helper and fired it next to Iwashiro Mizo Roku. At this time, there was no cover around Iwashiro Mizo Roku. Iwashiro Mizo Roku did a lazy donkey roll, turned around, and saw 5 or 6 dark gun muzzles pointed at him. Iwashiro Mizo Roku smiled wildly, then knelt down on both knees. Big brother, I was wrong, please spare me. His face changed at the speed of light. 1 second he was unruly and unrestrained, and the next second he was begging for mercy. He was a model of following his heart. Why were you so arrogant just now? I just wanted to show off, I'm sorry for causing you trouble. Aren't you afraid of guns? So many of us are carrying guns, why did you still rush out? I'm extremely nearsighted, my contact lenses fell out. Didn't you say you were a sword master? Well, my ancestor was indeed a sword master. Please don't kill me. Iwashiro Mizo Roku, a middle-aged man who looked fierce and menacing, was actually shedding tears and snot, looking like a little wife who had lost her virginity. John felt a chill. Shulnark was too lazy to insert an antenna into such a cowardly person. The number of people controlled by Shulnark's puppet phone was limited, and Iwashiro Mizo Roku's rating in Shulnark's mind was too low. Shulnark didn't want to waste a spot on him. Let's just kill him. Shulnark suggested. I advise you not to do that. Iwashiro Mizo Roku's face didn't show any panic. So many of you are beating me up, and you have guns, it's not fair. This is not my own strength. Even if I am beaten to death by you, I will not be reconciled. What are you looking at? It's you you deadbeat, the kind of person I despise the most. Iwashiro Mizoroku uttered bold words to Shulnark. The few strong men with guns were obviously not easy to mess with, the other two were children who couldn't save face, and that pretty boy looked very easy to bully. All of you look down on me, I know I'm very weak, but you can't make fun of me like this. So what do you want to do? John looked at Iwashiro Mizoroku with amusement. Iwashiro Mizoroku's bruised face and swollen nose made his words sound somewhat resentful. John couldn't help but laugh. You bastard, you want to laugh, right? John lowered his head and covered his stomach, unable to see his expression. Mr. Iwashiro Mizoroku, you have to believe me. I have undergone professional training, I won't laugh. Unless I can't help it. John seemed to have released his shackles and started laughing recklessly. The helper didn't realize that Lindsay was quite sympathetic to him, so no one laughed. John's laughter was even more jarring. I want to have a sacred duel with you, even if you are a little brat, you can't insult my dignity. Iwashiro Mizoroku's shamelessness once again refreshed John's understanding of his bottom line. Shulnark also wanted to see John's strength, and released Iwashiro Mizoroku with John's consent. Iwashiro Mizoroku and John stood facing each other, the cold wind blowing past the corners of their clothes, giving off the immediate impression of a battle between masters. Seeing that Iwashiro's didn't move, John took the lead in attacking. Of course, John didn't use his stand ability, but wanted to use his own body and Haman to fight Iwashiro's in close combat. John's momentum was like a rainbow, and Iwashiro's also took a few steps back. Iwashiro's, will definitely not fall down like this. I will take revenge on you, I will repay you 100-fold for the humiliation you have inflicted on me. Could it be? Isn't this place very familiar? This is a forest area, this is my escape route. Iwashiro's kept dodging and fleeing through the forest. Then, he threw a few senbon needles at Lindsay, the weakest member of the team. John wanted to save Lindsay and catch him, but John was still too young and not very fast. When it comes to running away, I've never been afraid of anyone. Iwashiro's looked proud. Is this something to be proud of? No, it's enough. A blue figure appeared behind John, Stone Free Stretch Punch. Stone Free's fist flew out like a cannonball connected by a string. The senbon needles were also casually blocked by Shulnark. Iwashiro, who couldn't see the stand, naturally couldn't dodge, and was knocked down with one blow. Can you not hit me? John looked at Iwashiro's, who was entangled in front of him, and said, You are too pitiful, I don't know what to say anymore. Ora 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 ora. The high-speed fists, which could only be seen as shadows, hit Iwashiro's face. Wait. I have something to give you. You should keep it for yourself. John raised his fist again. The suddenly raised fist stopped, and what Iwashiro's was holding in his hand was none other than Jenny banknotes, which is the money of the hunter world. Sayonara, uncle. Iwashiro's survived, and all his belongings were robbed. As a punishment, he wasn't even left with his pants. Then John watched the staff take away the naked swordsman Iwashiro's. Not even letting go of his pants, Joseph Joestar is indeed a dangerous person. Why is Shulnark staring at my and Iwashiro's butts? Damn it, could it be that he has taken a fancy to me and wants me to do a striptease play? Chapter 19. Phew, why hasn't anyone come out yet? Did everyone get wiped out this time? A Shamate-style country bumpkin with non-mainstream fashion was sitting under the awning at the entrance with a small stool in hand. A group of strong, burly men surrounded a makeshift small table. The Shamate examiner reached for 2 slices of watermelon on the table and began to devour them with gusto. Suddenly, a few figures appeared. Yo, that guy eliminated another contestant again. The examiner greeted a few staff members. The Shamate lowered his head to eat the watermelon, then, Hey, something doesn't seem right. Why is this one naked? That's right, it's that promising young hero. I really didn't expect the hero, who looks so fair and clean, to be into this kind of thing. The Shamate smiled wickedly, as if he had seen through the hero. I also saw several burly men protecting the hero. One of the staff members reported the hero's situation to the Shamate. This might be due to his ability. But it shouldn't be, no one should be able to beat him in the entire exam. It's not necessary. Jokes aside, the examiner still recognized the hero's strength, and he didn't want to believe the hero was gay. Impossible, there are also two delicate-looking kids beside him. The shammate fell silent, he couldn't make it up anymore. No, I have to ask someone who knows what's going on. The shammate looked at the examinee who was eliminated by the hero. The naked Iwata Kuroka fell to the ground, pretending to be unconscious. Stop pretending, you're awake, aren't you? Iwata Kuroka remained motionless. A staff member next to him couldn't stand it anymore, let me wake him up. After saying that, he unbuckled his belt, what are you going to do? Another staff member asked curiously. Let me piss him awake. What a poisonous heart. Let's not do that. Sure enough, there are still good people, Iwata Kuroka couldn't help but think. You can't, you have diabetes, can't let him taste the sweetness, my pee is yellow, let me do it. Give me back my, you bastard. Iwata Kuroka opened his eyes. Accidents sometimes come so suddenly. The instant Iwata Kuroka opened his eyes, a stream of urine gushed out. This staff member's kidneys look good, very powerful. Because it was too fast and too sudden, Iwata Kuroka was hit. Iwata Kuroka. That's a demon, I had already run away, but then I seemed to be attacked by something invisible. Invisible thing? Yet. Iwata Kuroka answered seriously. The shammate examiner could almost confirm that this must have been done by the hero. Among all the examinees, only the hero could use Nen. Moreover, ordinary people can't see Nen abilities. I didn't expect it, the hero, with his thick eyebrows and big eyes, is actually a pervert. At the same time, the hero eliminated another group of examinees. Achoo! The hero sneezed. He didn't expect his reputation to be ruined like this. The first stage of the hunter exam, which lasted for 5 days, was almost over. The hero's doorway robbery method did not achieve the expected results. More than 40 people still passed the exam. They found that the hero blocking the door was invincible, so they took a different approach, either digging tunnels or building ladders to climb over the wall directly. However, this pass rate is also very low. In the Gons class, more than 100 people passed the first exam. Compared with them, there are much fewer candidates in this class. After the first exam, there is a whole day of rest. The next day, the next examiner will lead the examinees to participate in the second exam. And John can also use this day to make some preparations. John doesn't want to open his stand during the exam. If you draw a card during a battle, there will be a fluke mentality. If you draw a powerful stand, you can reverse the battle, and it is undoubtedly unwise to pin your hopes on ethereal luck. John has never believed in any on-the-spot breakthroughs. Without the accumulation of usual efforts, wanting to rely on the spot breakthroughs is undoubtedly a dream. The battle with Barrow the crocodile gave John a huge stimulus. Although Stone Free is very strong, it is enough to deal with ordinary people. When encountering powerful magical beasts like Barrow the crocodile, the destructive power is slightly insufficient. Although Stone Free's destructive power is it is not enough. It can't even break Barrow the crocodile's skin. Stone Free's own destructive power growth limit is very low, and it is also a younger brother among the stands with destructive power A. Even if Stone Free is fully mature, a full-strength attack cannot break diamonds. Even Star Platinum is not necessarily stronger than Yuvajin in terms of power. Moreover, with Krollo there, although John has formed a strategic alliance with Krollo, the foundation of this alliance is fragile. Who knows when he will trick John? John doesn't dare to leave his back to Krollo. The foundation of Krollo's alliance with John is that Krollo doesn't understand why John can be immune to the control of the bookmark of the bandit's secret. Once he discovers the essence of John's ability, John has no confidence to survive under him. John knows very well that Krollo is, after all, an old veteran. Unless he draws stands like Star Platinum or the world that can stop time, he will definitely die in a head-on collision. John also wants to stabilize Krollo through the alliance first. John found a quiet place to sit down, closed his eyes, and immersed his consciousness in the system, skillfully opening the card drawing column in the upper right corner of the system. Select the stand card draw at the bottom. Then John exchanged a stand card for the gold coins accumulated in his backpack. This was what John had desperately earned with Barrow the crocodile. John calmly opened the card. The figure of the stand in the card gradually appeared. John's breathing became rapid, and his ripple breathing instantly failed. Chapter 20. A red figure flashed, gradually enlarging to reveal a red-clothed strongman with glaring, forgiveness green eyes and a white, mesh-patterned hat like me 4's. On his forehead was a green, toothache-stricken face. That's right, it's Big Boss Diavolo's stand, King Crimson. Destructive power, A. Speed, A. Range, E. Persistence, E. Precision, B. Potential. The official stats didn't give it, so when designing the game, John privately set the potential to B. John wasn't envious of King Crimson's A rank power and speed. Stone Free could achieve that too, and once Stone Free matured, its power and speed wouldn't be inferior to King Crimson's, plus Stone Free's persistence was far superior. What John wanted most was King Crimson's ability. Firstly, Time Erase. When activated, it could erase time, and everyone would lose the memory of what happened during the erased time. Only the user of King Crimson could react to events during this time. Time Erase could erase the process of what happened during that time, except for King Crimson's master, directly reaching the result. For example, Narencia ate chocolate during the erased time, but in Narencia's memory, he didn't eat it. This ability is somewhat similar to Dio's Time Stop. During the erased time, no one except himself can move. During Time Erase, one cannot attack others, but Time Stop allows attacks. This is why Diavolo so liked to sneak behind enemies to attack. The effective range of time-based stands is set to be the entire universe. Time Stop is fine, unless it's a similar type of stand, no one can detect it. Time Erase is different. Once activated, the whole world loses the memory of the erased time. The whole world will notice the anomaly. King Crimson also has a very important ability, Epitaph. Epitaph can see what will happen next, and the predicted future will definitely happen unless Time Erase is used. However, it cannot predict the process or method of how the future will unfold. Having this stand can be considered having a means of self-preservation. Moreover, it can predict the opponent's attacks in advance, and if you can't win, you can use Time Erase to escape. For John, who aims to be a coward, this stand is very practical. The previous user, Diavolo, was the king of cowards. If it weren't for his daughter's mockery and his excessive reliance on Time Erase, becoming too arrogant, and overlooking a few seconds of Epitaph, he wouldn't have arrogantly adjusted the gold experience Requiem. The association only provided tents, and everyone could get one. On the day of rest, although there were arguments, no one caused trouble or fought. Fighting during rest time is a violation of the exam rules, and once blood is drawn, exam qualification is revoked. So, John and the others spent the day in this strange atmosphere. The sun rose from the sea, reflecting on the water, creating sparkling waves. Silver and gold shimmered in the ocean. The sun's golden rays also shone on Ballo Island. In fact, Ballo Island's vegetation was very lush, and green light shone through the leaves onto the examinees' heads. For some reason, John felt a little uneasy looking at this green light. Although the sun had already risen, the moon hadn't gone off duty yet. Because it was high tide, all the examinees retreated to the island. According to plan, someone would come to pick up the examinees at 6:30 this morning to go to the venue for the second test. John woke up early at 5:30 and started exercising. The examinees had all gathered by around 6 o'clock, and everyone was looking forward to the second test. The noisy chirping of cicadas in the summer and the sound of waves crashing against the reefs wore down the examinees' patience. Before the proctor for the second test arrived, they had to keep waiting. A figure appeared on the sea, gradually approaching until it was discovered to be a bare-chested young man, about 26 or 27 years old, riding a surfboard at high speed. This ability is so familiar, I feel like I've seen it somewhere before. Probably a minor character who appeared in the original story. John didn't dwell on it too much. "Hi, old Boone. Yo, little Graham, it's been a long time." The two hugged each other, the scene giving off a gay vibe. Through the vaguely overheard conversation, John knew that the flamboyant proctor was called Graham and was just over 40 years old. The second test was swimming to Orphalese Island, east of Ballo Island, a total of 45 kilometers. Although this distance was a bit long, it wasn't a difficult task for examinees aiming to be hunters. Among the many ordinary people who couldn't use Nin, there was no shortage of physically monstrous beasts. The proctor gave the examinees a day and a half. After receiving the news, no examinee jumped directly into the sea and ran. Because there were many dog sharks around Ballo Island. Normally, they might swim out, but now that everyone was more or less injured after completing the first test, sharks were very sensitive to the smell of blood in the water. Rushing down now would only increase unnecessary casualties. Some people started logging to prepare to build small rafts, trying not to let their wounds touch the sea. However, sailing a bamboo raft could be very dangerous without knowing the locations of the reefs. However, John wasn't afraid. Crollo looked at John. John nodded, and Crollo smiled back, starting to walk towards a deserted part of the forest. Before long, Crollo had several animal corpses in his hands, looking like they hadn't been dead for long, still warm. Then, Crollo threw the small animals towards the distant sea. Crollo ran quickly, reaching a long distance before jumping into the water. Before long, John noticed that almost all the sharks around had swarmed towards the animal corpses, giving Crollo a chance to swim out of the dangerous waters. John hadn't figured out why Crollo didn't use his non-ability skill hunter to control the shark pack but used a conventional method to lure the sharks away and then run. Chapter 21. This little trick deceived most examinees, but it couldn't fool some experienced participants and examiners who were also hunters. Speaking of which, the Phantom Troop, as a group of thieves, is not good at infiltration or theft. Basically, they are discovered as soon as they try to steal something. Most members of the Phantom Troop are too distinctive and not easy to hide. Especially Yuvajin and Kyubei, who look too weird. In addition, most of the members have explosive tempers and reveal their killing intent at every turn. Their brains are filled with muscles. They have enough IQ to deal with enemies, but they are usually just so-so. The Phantom Troop can be called a gathering place for masters of infiltration. As long as you kill everyone who discovers me, no one will discover me. As long as you kill everyone, it will be considered a qualified assassination. As a thief organization, they kill all the owners of the auction items in the auction house, that is, the gangsters who were killed, and then slowly steal things. Perhaps it was a habit developed in the Phantom Troop, or perhaps it was just a coincidence that he didn't try to hide it carefully. Crollo's escape method was discovered by quite a few people. But whether they can do it is another matter. Only a master like Crollo, who has an ability, dares to play like this. After all, even the biggest prey has its limits. There are many sharks in this sea area, and this trick can only fool people for a while. Although this trick is not sophisticated, it is still very creative. Even the examiners marveled at it. Is this the dark horse this year? Yes, he will definitely pass this year. His aura is very amazing. I feel like I am no match for him. The Shamart examiner replied solemnly. I criticized him a bit during the exam before, threatening him that he wouldn't pass the exam. Shamart turned to Grachan, the examiner of the second exam, and said. The moment I threatened him, he couldn't help but release his killing intent. I am very sure that he had murderous intentions towards me. At that moment, I felt like I was being watched by some terrifying monster. My intuition told me that I would die if I opposed him again. Grachan was also a little frightened by the stare, seeing that Boone's expression was not fake. Hey, really? You thought the Shamart examiner didn't stop Crollo, but he found Crollo blocking the door and warned him not to do this. As for why the Shamart examiner didn't die, it was because killing the examiner during the exam would disqualify him from this year's exam. In fact, Yuvajin and Nobunaga also participated in the hunter exam, but because of their intelligence, Yuvajin lost in the intelligence test. So in that session, the examiners and examinees were all killed, and Yuvajin and Nobunaga were blacklisted by the Hunter Association. Faced with the threat of death, the Shamart examiner chose to follow his heart. Isn't it good to be alive? It's just a violation of the exam rules, it won't kill you to violate it once. Fortunately, there are still smart people. Many people retreated when faced with difficulties and bypassed the wall to pass the level. Otherwise, there would really be no way to explain it to the chairman. But you also need to be careful, Alas, don't worry, I am a specialist. Not many people can kill me in the sea with my ability. Even Chairman Netero said that he can't take me down on the water. Don't worry. No, I'm not talking about this. He has an unknown perverted hobby. Hiss, Grachan gasped. This kid is so terrifying, he likes both young and old. It is said that he also stripped a middle-aged sloppy man's clothes. He couldn't see the stand, so he didn't know that John did it, and always thought it was Crollo who did it, and kept 2 young children. Grachan, who is in his 20s, is very panicked. As a handsome young man, self-proclaimed, he has to guard against perverts. Thinking of this, Grachan's chrysanthemum tightened, and his legs began to rub unconsciously. I will be careful, Grachan replied seriously to the Shamart examiner. Damn it, I should just watch from afar. It would be troublesome if he had a manipulator ability, and I might be transformed into a hot weapon. Grachan felt a chill. Others also followed Krollo's example and began to swim out or build rafts to Ephyrunt Island, which is very close to Barreled Island. But most of the examinees will fall on the road. Many people actually have some small wounds, but sharks are very sensitive to the stimulation of blood. They can smell blood from hundreds of miles away. The moving sea reef also sank many rafts. Swimming is not easy either, because of the moving sea reef, the water flow in the sea is irregular and very turbulent. It takes strong physical strength to stabilize and swim out in this kind of water flow. John also chose to swim. After all, Krollo chose not to use an ability. John naturally kept a hand as well. Almost all the examinees rushed to the sea desperately, and for a while, the originally quiet sea seemed like a group of demons dancing wildly, sprinkling blood on others. Let the sharks kill their opponents. This has no effect on John and Krollo. Krollo swam too far for them to reach. John is the opposite. He is at the very back of the swimming team. Others disdain to deal with an underage elementary school student. However, John still chose a wooden stake as a boat and silently sensed the moving sea reef for only a short while. Some people have swam half of the area covered by the moving sea reef. John was not happy at all when he saw this situation. The hunter exam will definitely not be so simple. The swimming mileage looks very long. In fact, that's it. This data was indeed awesome in the previous life, but there are many people in the hunter world who can do this. Grachan also occasionally saves drowning examinees, but once an examinee is rescued, they lose their qualification for the exam. After a short 5 minutes, the sky began to become gloomy, the sun was blocked by clouds, and the clouds gradually turned grayish-black. Clouds from afar were constantly approaching here. It's going to rain. All the examinees made a judgment. Could it be that this is the second exam of the hunter exam, and what they have to confront is extreme weather? Hunters inevitably encounter some extreme weather when performing tasks, which can be said to be a test of the examinee's courage. This rain was premeditated. Grachan knew a few days ago that it would rain today. So he deliberately asked the Shamart examiner to stabilize the examinees first and wait for the opportunity. Grachan also invited his close friend Morel to help. If someone's physical strength is insufficient, the examiner is responsible for salvaging and rescuing people. Lindsay was pulled by John's thread so that she would not be eliminated. John was also swaying slowly in the sea in the wind and rain. John knew that he could no longer hide his clumsiness. He immediately used ripple breathing and standability. However, this rain was a shower. This kind of weather is very common at sea. After a while, the rain stopped, and the waves quickly subsided. Seagulls circled in the air, forming a beautiful picture with the newly cleared blue sky. Really? Maki, Kalito. John looked at the gradually appearing shadow with a shocked expression. Chapter 22. The sea, enraged by the heavy rain, abandoned its usual calm and blue hue. Due to the dim light, it now appeared a deep, grayish-black. It resembled an endless abyss, and looking down evoked a feeling of being sucked in. Waves several meters high possessed the power to destroy life, and lightning tore a gash in the sky. In the downpour, the sky and the sea simultaneously vented their fury. John was also exhausted by the heavy rain, but fortunately, it was a passing shower that stopped after only a few minutes. Otherwise, this year's examinees might have been wiped out. Compared to the magnificent power of nature, humans were too insignificant. If this rain had lasted long enough, even monster-level non-users like Yovajan would have succumbed to the disaster. The number of examinees had been reduced by more than half, and the examiners were nowhere to be seen. At this moment, a huge shadow enveloped John and Lindsay. What a large ship! The bow was very sharp, and the hull was very long. It looked like something from the age of exploration. As it gradually approached, John realized that this was no ordinary ship. The hull had a series of closed windows. Anyone who had seen Pirates of the Caribbean would know that these windows were for cannons. Speaking of which, the hunter world was indeed a manga world, with many illogical elements. The technology in the hunter world was not bad, generally around the level of the early 2000s in his original world, with computers and mobile phones. However, Gon used a wooden sailboat to go to sea to find his father, which showed how strange the technology in this world was. Now, the ship appearing before John's eyes had a rich sense of history. Although it wasn't old, one could tell that it had been through many battles, with many wooden planks patched up on the hull, presumably from cannon fire. This should be an armed ship, John judged. Several ropes were thrown down from the ship. In this stage where physical strength was lacking, John desperately hoped for a place to rest. Perhaps it was also due to his confidence in his own strength that John and Lindsay boarded the large ship. A group of people also boarded the ship with John. They knew that they would not be able to reach their destination on their own, so they might as well take a gamble and let the captain take them to the second exam venue. Because this sudden rainstorm had consumed a lot of their physical strength. Of course, not everyone was overwhelmed by the test. There were still many people who remained vigilant, constantly guarding against sneak attacks. After all, it was too coincidental that a storm just happened to occur, and then a ship just happened to appear at this juncture. The wary examinees still decided to swim across. Facts proved that these veterans' judgment was correct. As soon as John came up, he was surrounded by 5 or 6 burly men with guns. John knew what was going on. Because Lindsay was there, and John's physical strength had not yet recovered, and they had guns, John didn't dare to be careless and raised his hands to show that he gave up resisting. The whole process was very tacit. John didn't speak and obeyed orders. Clang! John and the other examinees who came up were handcuffed. The rescued examinees were gathered in one place, where there were many other handcuffed prisoners, mostly not this year's examinees. The personnel were complex, with all kinds of people. As for kind pirates, just go to sleep. Who would be a pirate if they were kind-hearted? I am the first mate of this ship. I am here to tell you trash that if you cooperate with me, I will not kill you. From the pirate who claimed to be the first mate, he learned that they were the Redbeard pirates, the largest pirates in the nearby waters. A few days ago, a professional bounty hunter was chasing them, and they had no choice but to find enough hostages to threaten the professional hunter. There were more than 50 prisoners on the ship. If they were killed by outsiders during the exam, the Hunter Association would also be criticized and questioned by all sectors of society. In fact, when he first came up, John made a mistake. Perhaps he watched too many movies and anime, and thought that pirates would hang their pirate flag high on the mast. But the truth was not so. Most of the time, pirate groups usually did not raise their pirate flags. First, it was too risky to hang the pirate flag. If a master came to hunt them down, wouldn't the flag instantly expose them? Second, if they encountered a merchant ship or yacht with a pirate flag on top, who would dare to approach? John didn't care what the first mate was saying. The most important thing now was to recover his strength. After all, the body was the capital of the revolution. He would consider counterattacking after his body and strength were restored. Only handcuffs were a joke to John. With stone freeze string form, his body could quickly turn into a string. Had anyone ever seen handcuffs that could hold a thread? Obviously, it was impossible. If necessary, John could break free from the shackles in an instant. This was the reason why John could remain calm. Of course, there were also people who didn't cooperate. The pirates directly beat them up and then killed them to feed the fish. Of course, John didn't see it on the spot, but only heard about it. However, John thought that what they said was right. After all, it was okay to kill 1 or 2 troublemakers, as long as they didn't kill them all and left some people, they would have the qualifications to negotiate with the association. He didn't want to be the pirate king anymore. This industry was full of ugly freaks who either looked ferocious or were not handsome at all. Moreover, because they were at sea all year round, their desires could not be vented, and their psychology gradually became perverted. In short, they were a group of social scum. John ignored them and didn't curse and wail like the other prisoners, nor did he discuss escape plans with others. He just quietly recovered his strength, ready to give them a righteous backstab at the best time. About 2 hours passed, or maybe longer. John heard the thud-thud sound, the sound of cannonballs. The best opportunity was coming. John and the other prisoners were escorted to the deck. A burly man with a red beard shouted at the warship opposite. "You" could not be translated for various reasons. It probably meant that if the other side did not surrender, he would kill 1 person every 5 minutes. After speaking, he took out his pistol and shot a prisoner dead with a bang. The action was too fast, and someone died before John could react. The bounty hunter seemed to be anxious too and started trying to stabilize him with his voice. "Don't come over, I'll kill them if you come any closer." The bounty hunter's idea of getting close for a melee was completely bankrupt. John immediately transformed his entire body into a string and summoned Crimson King to activate Epitaph. After a while, John activated Epitaph again. Redbeard pulled the trigger and fired a few shots at John. The bullets left a clear trajectory in the air. John tilted his head and dodged 2 bullets, and another hit his string-like body. Redbeard pulled the trigger, exactly the same as what Epitaph saw. Then, Crimson King, erase it, time. Chapter 23. Erase the time of everyone but me. The whole world turned grey, and all movement ceased. John could clearly see Redbeard aiming his gun at John and firing several shots. John saw exactly what Redbeard was planning to do. John got up and easily dodged the bullets, then charged towards Redbeard. John spat a mouthful of thick phlegm into Captain Redbeard's eyes. This would interfere with Redbeard's vision, essentially sealing off his attacks. John didn't have blood to spurt, nor did he dare smear blood on someone's face. Those who smear blood on faces never meet a good end. Old Man Dio smeared blood on Jojo, and was tragically countered by Star Platinum. The plastic world was shattered in 2, and he didn't even have ashes left. Looking at the second person who used this move, Diavolo, the Generation's Yanko star, also used this move. He didn't even have the chance to die, only endlessly repeating the process of death. John also uses Crimson King, so he can't fail in the same place. Fate has its own will in the dark. That bullet is strange. John noticed that the bullets Redbeard shot at him had turned into small cherry tomatoes. They looked like pearl jam, but uglier, seeming to be laughing maniacally. They exploded on the ground, turning into a pool of blood-red dance. John's nerves tightened. It's a stand attack, or rather, an ability attack. Without a doubt, Redbeard was an user. Fortunately, John didn't use Stone Free to resist, or he might have triggered some special effect and fallen there. This ability that looks like pearl jam is definitely not simple, but everything is over. He no longer has a chance to resist, Crimson King won't give him that chance. John openly circled behind Redbeard, and Crimson King's fist stopped behind Redbeard. Time begins to flow. Everyone looked towards where John had been standing, and there were many spots of blood. But the person was gone, because they couldn't see the time erased by Crimson King, so their consciousness was still stuck on the captain firing the gun. They had no memory of John escaping. A large red hand pierced Captain Redbeard's kidney. This is a righteous kidney strike. Hey, where's the guy? Then, a mouthful of old blood spurted out, and a sharp pain was felt in the kidney. Because his eyes were covered by John's thick phlegm, Redbeard looked down and saw a large hand emerging from his kidney. A wave of weakness followed. Redbeard had never felt so weak. A hand grew out of my kidney. Before Redbeard could figure it out, a burst of pain and weakness swept through his body. Redbeard spat out another mouthful of blood and collapsed, his consciousness fading. John's hand also separated from Redbeard's kidney. Only then could everyone see the figure behind Captain Redbeard. John's hands were covered in blood, and fresh blood dripped from John's hands onto the deck. John looked calm and solemn. This was John's first time using Crimson King, and he was very happy and felt very powerful. As expected of a boss's stand. But there was also a disgusting feeling. After all, this was John's first time killing someone with his own hands, and he still felt a bit nauseous. Strictly speaking, Jackman was the first person John killed, but Jackman drowned, and the visual effect was far less impactful than Redbeard's death. Jackman didn't shed a drop of blood when he died, while Redbeard's intestines were all over the place. John was still immersed in the power of Crimson King and the fragility of the great pirate Redbeard. After killing him, John's first thought was how weak this pirate was. Everyone on the ship was stunned. They saw Redbeard firing the gun, then a kid suddenly disappeared, and the next second, that kid appeared behind Redbeard and killed him. Seeing the still warm, ferocious great pirate Redbeard fall before John, there was a sense of disillusionment. Who am I? What happened? Questions and doubts flooded everyone's minds. The most confused were the Redbeard pirates' crew. Oh, it's time for the boss to show off again. First, we must crush the enemy's fighting spirit. The boss found a delicate little kid and shot him. What a pity for such a cute boy. If he were given to me, what a waste. The friend next to him breathed a sigh of relief. Luckily, it's not the boy I had my eye on. The Redbeard pirates had no women, women would die within a few days of boarding the ship. As for the good ones, they were exclusively enjoyed by the captain. Since there were no female crew members, they had to find men to satisfy their physiological needs. This caused 9 out of 10 of the Redbeard pirates to be gay. But with the captain killed, the ordinary crew members were still very frightened. The captain's strength was the best on the ship, but such a strong person was instantly killed. Many people were thinking of retreating. He suddenly flashed behind Redbeard, and then Redbeard died. It was too fast. For a moment, no one reacted. Fortunately, John was not aware of this problem. There were still smart people who realized that if John wasn't killed to stabilize the situation, everyone would die. "Boys, kill him!" the vice-captain roared. Everyone was awakened at once, and everyone began to raise their guns and shoot at John. But John's time erasure was almost ready again. Fire! Hundreds of bullets poured towards John, creating an impenetrable net of bullets, impossible to dodge. But John was not panicked at all. "Crimson King, erase my time." Those prisoners were stunned for a moment and quickly reacted. This was something beyond their plan. They didn't consider John's combat power in their plan, causing a time selection error. John strode towards the densely packed pirates. String extension fist, aura. Stone freeze fist flew out and directly smashed into the vice-captain's face. The other hand swept to the side. The other crew members' shots arrived. They didn't care if they would accidentally injure their allies. Bang, da-da-da. When the bullets were about to hit John, a pirate next to him fell down, just blocking the flight of many bullets. John's pressure was greatly reduced. This was not a coincidence, this was what John had foreseen with Epitaph. John's actions just now were all meaningful, in order to block this bullet attack. Stone Free could easily block the next bullets. Aura aura aura. In the ordinary person's perspective, the bullets fell in front of John out of thin air. Everyone's attention was on John, which gave the other prisoners a chance. They broke free from their restraints, and not many people noticed. The prisoners rioted. The pirates were all filled with fear. How could they fight against someone who was hacking the game? Some pirates even jumped into the sea and ran away. John also killed wantonly, traversing through the pirates as if in an uninhabited place. At this moment, someone landed heavily on the deck. Chapter 24. Bang! The man landed on the deck like a cannonball. The entire ship tilted from the impact of his arrival. A short-haired, muscular man in a white suit, resembling Vigo from One Piece, appeared before everyone. He merely squatted there, yet no one could ignore his presence. What an impressive entrance! John was also drawn to the spectacle. John could use Stone Free to perform actions impossible for normal people. John's prone posture was extremely bizarre, but it was fast enough. If it could be filmed, it would definitely be a rising star in the Ghost, a Chinese video-sharing website. His entire body fell vertically downwards. The bullets originally aimed at John rushed towards the man because John suddenly fell to the ground. King Crimson's time erasure has a cooldown and cannot be used frequently. Moreover, if time erasure is used too much, others will notice. The entire world can feel King Crimson's time erasure. Currently, John can only erase a maximum of 3 seconds of time, and Epitaph can only predict 5 seconds. There is still a big difference compared to Diavollo's peak King Crimson. The bullets in the air turned into small tomatoes, and some bullets turned into soybeans. These high-speed fruits, like the Sex Pistols' Little People, had rich expressions. This indicates that it's not Redbeard's ability, the true ability user is still on the ship. John didn't dare to be careless. King Crimson's time erasure still needed a second to cool down. Adhering to the spirit of better a friend die than me, John dodged. That man didn't look like a good person, he should be able to block those bullets. It should be fine, right? The man, seeing the specially modified bullets flying towards him, maintained a lofty and calm expression, without a trace of panic. With one hand, he lifted the black robe behind him, and with a flick, the entire cloak began to spin. The vortex-like cloak stood firmly in front of him, preventing any bullets from penetrating its defense. The tomato and soybean bullets, imbued with nin, fell to the ground upon hitting the cloak. The entire cloak was undamaged. The shooting lasted for more than 10 seconds, and the man only stopped after the pirates' magazines were emptied. Danger! John roared. But the man had already put away his cloak. From the shadows, another person raised a modified handgun. This gun was very similar to the Desert Eagle from his previous life, but because the average physical fitness of people in the hunter world was higher, the power of this gun far surpassed the Desert Eagle. This gun even possessed the power of some light sniper rifles from his previous life, but the recoil was enormous, so few people used it. This type of gun was generally used for collection, but some non-users would also use it. The pirate also lost his combat effectiveness after firing 3 shots, because the powerful recoil of the gun caused a burst of pain in his hand, causing it to bleed. The recoil of the gun caused the gun to break free from his hand and strike the pirate's face directly. But the 3 bullets had already been fired. John's King Crimson erases time, it doesn't stop time. The bullets still flew along their trajectory, and John couldn't stop them. Epitaph activated. In the future that John saw, the man was shot several times, covered in blood, and fell weakly off the ship. Damn, he made such a grand entrance, only to be killed in a few seconds. That's too embarrassing. He should have at least finished his act. John's pressure increased, as there was one less person to attract fire. Well done, Joseph. The pirates next to him shouted happily, as if a monster-like person wasn't unkillable. Then they looked at John with cruel and fanatical eyes, as if to say that he was next. Because he already knew, John wasn't too surprised, but threw himself wholeheartedly into the battle. During this time, the pirates' attention was focused on John and the dead man, which gave others a chance. They took this time to untie all the ropes of the prisoners. That's a monster's battle, we shouldn't interfere. Some timid people, unable to bear the bloody battle between John, the man, and the pirates, jumped into the sea. But most of them stayed to fight the pirates together. King Crimson's time erasure had finished cooling down, and the pirates' guns were mostly burst-fire assault rifles, which took a while to reload. They also became arrogant because they had killed the man, and the reloading speed in their hands slowed down a lot. They had the illusion that they could counter-kill all the pirates. After John knocked down 2 pirates, he activated Epitaph again. The other pirates had also reloaded their bullets, and raised their guns to aim at John. King Crimson, erase time except for me. The world turned black and grey again. 1 second passed, John got up and rolled to the side of the ship. 2 seconds passed, the shooting started, and bullets rained down on the location where John had been. John jumped up, crossed the side of the ship, and jumped down. In the 3rd second, the shooting continued, and John had already descended completely, stopping only a few tens of centimeters from the water surface. John gathered ripple energy to his fingertips and toes, sticking to the ship's wall. After 3 seconds, everyone was stunned. Why did they suddenly start shooting? They had no memory at all. Not only them, but the whole world was like this. Those resisting prisoners were also confused. They just wanted to rush up and help their teammates, but they didn't expect their teammates to disappear in the next second, and they inexplicably appeared next to the pirates. Who could handle this? I was just thinking about whether to help or not. The most important thing is that the teammate disappeared. John could be said to have sold his teammates well. The pirates panicked when they found that John had disappeared again. Those bold examinees took the opportunity to strike hard at the pirates, achieving considerable results. At the same time, John, hanging on the wall of the ship, was also shocked by the scene in front of him. Chapter 25. That man, who should have died, was floating in the sea, and at the same time, he also looked up at John. Both faces were dumbfounded. Wasn't he already dead? Why is he still here? John was very puzzled. What happened to the heroic sacrifice? Why is he pretending to be dead here? My name is Matt, and I am very desperate. I'm just a salted fish in the water. How was I discovered? My image is completely ruined. Also, how did he get out of that group of vicious pirates unscathed? Are those pirates stupid? They didn't even bother to chase him without any injuries. They're not professional at all. And how is he stuck to the side of the ship? I can't see any traces of him practicing Nen. John stared carefully at Matt. The amount of bleeding from the bullets all over his body should have been fatal. Then he saw that Matt still had bloodstains on him, but no wounds. Could it be some kind of special healing ability? John guessed. So many fatal wounds were healed all at once. If it were an ability, it would definitely consume a lot of energy. This would explain why he didn't come up. With the excessive consumption of Nen, his combat power might not even be as high as an ordinary person. No, that's not right. If he's bleeding in the sea, it's even more dangerous than on land. This is not far from Below Island, and there are many sharks. Sharks can smell blood from kilometers away. There's no reason why sharks wouldn't come. John fell into deep thought. John suddenly saw the bloodstains on Matt's clothes. Hey, How is it possible that none of it dissolved into the water? There must be something wrong with this. The color of these blood scabs is also wrong. Blood scabs are usually dark red or brownish red, definitely not bright red. John thought of the bullets that were fired at Matt, which seemed to be tomatoes. Could it be that these are all tomato juice produced by the explosion of tomatoes? In other words, this ability may have been blocked by him. Of course, this ability may not be from the pirates, but from his own ability or the ability of other friendly forces. John was thinking, and Matt didn't speak either. The scene fell into an awkward silence. John didn't ask any more questions. There's no time now. According to John's epitaph, the battle on the deck was in full swing. The prisoners without weapons couldn't hold out for too long against the ferocious pirates. Although a group of people gave up resistance and ran away, fortunately, there was still a group of examinees leading other prisoners to fight back. The examinees who can get to this point are all good hands, and their combat power among ordinary people is also outstanding. They wouldn't be wiped out all at once. Taking advantage of this time, Crimson King's time deletion has cooled down again. But John doesn't plan to use it like this, because Matt in the water below is an user. It would be troublesome for John if the other party reported to the Hunter Association chairman. Others can be vague about it, but high intelligence non-users are difficult to fool. Why can others move randomly, but you can move consciously? This would greatly reduce the mystery of Crimson King, and others would be more easily targeted. The real use of Crimson King should be like Diavolo, hiding and not letting others discover his ability and appearance. Diavolo maintained the mystery of Crimson King through this trick. He has been the boss of the Pass Ione organization for many years. If it weren't for Trish, Giorno wouldn't even know who the boss was. John jumped hard and returned to the deck. Bang, a revolving landing. Crimson King, delete the time of everyone except me. Everything around turned grey. John had already foreseen the pirates' actions through epitaph. Next, John summoned Stone Free, and countless lines connected to the 6 pirates. 4 seconds passed. Perhaps he wasn't very skilled at first, but now he's gradually becoming familiar with the feeling of time deletion, and the amount of time he can delete is gradually becoming longer. However, 4 seconds is not John's limit now. John's limit should be 5 seconds. Perhaps in a few years, he can grow to Diavolo's level of more than 10 seconds, but now John can only delete a maximum of 5 seconds of time. 5 seconds arrived, so the pirate's head also turned around. He was stunned to see John, thinking, how is it this demon again? Didn't he already disappear? But the movements in his hand didn't stop, and the muzzle immediately aimed at John. John and those prisoners were not at the same level in the pirates' minds. The prisoners were limited in strength. The pirates with guns could easily wipe them out. But John was different. He could teleport and killed their captain as soon as he appeared. He didn't look like an ordinary person at all. The pressure on those prisoners was greatly reduced. They prepared to pull the trigger, but how could John give them this chance? Ripple breathing. A golden electric light followed the lines into the 5 pirates connected to the lines. They fell sideways, blocking the other pirates' attack routes on John, and turned around to pull the trigger and shoot at their teammates. This move caught the pirates off guard, and more than a dozen died instantly, including the few that John controlled with Ripple. Bastard, that demon warlock, he controlled our brothers, everyone, kill him. A pirate roared. Every pirate who stayed behind was a ruthless person. They had no choice. The bounty hunter's ship was approaching. If they couldn't stabilize the situation, it would be useless even if they ran away. No matter how fast you swim, you can't be faster than a ship. This is a desperate struggle. The only way out is to kill him. Success is the only option, failure is not allowed. All the pirates looked ferocious, their faces distorted by fear and madness. Because Epitaph predicted the trajectory in advance, John dodged most of the bullets, and John blocked the remaining small portion with Ripple and Stone Free. Because there were many pirates and the firepower was strong, and the damage coverage was wide, John didn't dare to take it head-on. Now that so many people have been reduced, both the bullet coverage and firepower have been greatly weakened. John can completely face it head-on. Stone Free and Ripple blocked the bullets in front of John. John kept sprinting, but not a single bullet landed on John. It was as if there was an invisible wall in front of John, and the bullets fell as soon as they touched it. No matter what, how can humans defeat monsters? Another pirate collapsed, with only despair in his eyes. There was still one pirate on the field with a sense of resistance, and that was the first mate on the ship. His momentum was locked on, and there was no way to avoid it. Crimson King's time dilation hadn't finished cooling down yet. There was no way to avoid it, and John was also aroused with bloodlust. Stone Free. Stone Free put his hands together and caught the III slash. John took the opportunity to kick and break his leg. He subdued him instantly. Phew, John sighed. It's finally over. Don't come over, let me go, or I'll kill him. John looked back and saw Lindsay being held hostage by a pirate, who was pointing a gun at Lindsay's head. Bastard, keep being arrogant. John was furious, how dare he? I already gave him a chance to live. He didn't finish him off, which led to this tragedy. Affected by self-blame and anger, John felt a surge of hot blood rushing to the top of his head. John felt his head getting very hot, and his consciousness also became blurred. John gradually lost consciousness. Warm reminder, the website is about to be revised, which may cause the loss of reading progress. Please save your bookshelf and reading records in time, it is recommended to save screenshots. We apologize for the inconvenience. Chapter 26. Don't come over here, you guys. The pirate yelled. John suddenly found himself unable to control his body for a brief moment, but he quickly regained consciousness. John stood in place with a gloomy expression, staring intently at the pirate. The pirate's face was covered in blood, his nose had been broken, and several teeth were missing. His mouth was filled with bloody bubbles, and his eyes were crazed. But just now, John seemed not to hear him and continued to walk forward. He didn't even use time erasure, just walking forward with undisguised purpose. His pace was steady and slow, completely disregarding the pirate. Hey, I'm talking to you. Don't move. The pirate said, trembling all over. John looked at the pirate with a blank expression. I don't know what you're talking about. I'll shoot. John remained unmoved, and the pirate's heart sank. The pirate was actually at his wit's end, riding a tiger he couldn't dismount. He didn't have confidence in John either. After all, John possessed superpowers and was a ruthless person who wouldn't bat an eye at killing. Who knew if he was a partner of justice who would let him go for the sake of a kid? He was gambling because John and Lindsay had been captured and brought onto the ship together. He was betting that John and Lindsay had a good relationship. But John's performance made the pirate's heart grow cold. John seemed not to hear him and kept walking. The pirate once again experienced the fear of being dominated by death. Your fate of defeat has long been sealed, John said, stopping and pointing at the pirate with one hand. The pirate trembled violently. What are you talking about? But he still retreated step by step. John kicked the dagger into the air. The pirate knew that John had murder in his heart. Either way, he was going to die, so he might as well drag someone down with him. The pirate fired, but John didn't use time erasure. The bullet hit Lindsay's head, and blood burst out. Lindsay collapsed onto the deck with a thud, losing her voice. The pirate aimed his gun at the others. In the nick of time, a certain examinee next to him picked up a gun and shot at the pirate. Bang, bang. Several gunshots rang out. Perhaps because of the emergency, the shots were scattered, but one still hit the pirate's head. 3 seconds passed. After being shot, the pirate lost consciousness and fell backward. The dagger spun in the air and plunged straight into the pirate's neck. The pirate struggled violently, blood splattering everywhere. But soon, he kicked his legs and died, the area beneath him soaked in blood. John had foreseen everything with epitaph and knew where the pirate would fall, which allowed him to take down the pirate in such a coincidental way. John walked to Lindsay's body and squatted down, slapping her corpse. There was no reaction. You bastard, don't desecrate the corpse. A righteous examinee shouted. But John ignored him and slapped her again. Hiss, that hurts. Lindsay, who was playing dead, woke up. John turned to look at the survivors. Lindsay wasn't dead. Almost everyone was shocked, because Lindsay had been shot in the head. Lindsay also touched her head. Hey? There was no hole in her head, which meant Lindsay wasn't injured. The bloody paste could easily be removed. Lindsay was also confused. Hadn't she already died? Lindsay touched the bloodstain and then put it to her nose to smell it. There's no bloody smell. It's tomato juice, though I don't know what kind. Seriously, we've been fighting for so long, and there hasn't even been a single death. No, there should only be 2 deaths, John said, standing up. Everyone looked at John, waiting for him to give an answer. John walked straight to someone who had resisted the pirates. Are you an examiner or a bounty hunter? What are you talking about? I'm just an ordinary person who was captured by the pirates, a thin man said, puzzled. Stop pretending, I saw everything, John said, staring intently at him. Ah, what he said is right, everyone is alive, a passerby verified John's statement. He woke up someone who had been knocked unconscious by the pirates. Sure enough, all the injuries were fake. The thin man was silent for a moment. How did you see through it? He asked, looking up at John. Wasn't that your ability? John looked surprised, as if asking, what are you talking about? While John was talking to the man, the bounty hunters boarded the pirate ship and tied up the pirates. John later learned that this was a joint operation by the Hunter Association. The thin man was called Chris, and he could replace bullets with tomatoes. He couldn't do it with knives, so some people were still injured by knives. Fortunately, technology is now advanced, and the pirates have kept up with the times. They rarely use knives anymore, mostly using guns to shoot directly. That's why there were no casualties. At the same time, Jojo, tens of thousands of miles away, sat on the edge of a large pit, staring blankly at his hand. What's going on? I remember I haven't used Big Bang Impact yet. What is this feeling? But Jojo didn't think much about it. He stood up from a pile of minced meat and left. Jojo thought it might be the ability of the person he had killed, but since they were already dead, he didn't pay much attention. Krollo was also vigilantly observing his surroundings. He had just been about to steal something when it suddenly appeared in his hand, and his position had also shifted. Such a terrifying ability. Krollo was certain this was not an illusion. Because of this, Krollo abandoned his original series of plans and ran away. Of course, that's another story. John, who was far away taking the exam, didn't know any of this. The whole world was affected by King Crimson's time erasure. Some people noticed they were missing a memory, and some noticed but didn't take it seriously. But for highly skilled non-users, this impact was significant. Moshi Moshi, has anyone gone to the Dark Continent recently? Chairman, what are you saying? Of course not. Wasn't that banned a long time ago? Is there something wrong? No, who could it be? An old man in ancient costume sat cross-legged on a futon and hung up the phone. He pinched his beard and fell into thought. Chapter 27. Chris and Matt were both bounty hunters, but also examiners. To create the right atmosphere, they specifically hired a real pirate crew. To prevent the examinees and captives from being killed, Chris infiltrated the enemy ship first. With Chris's abilities, it was difficult for the pirates to kill anyone. Chris's ability was to turn bullets into fruit and add some special effects. For example, he had previously added sleeping pills to tomatoes, so that the performance could be as realistic as possible, and to prevent the pirates from discovering it. Chris used Nen to write and communicate with Matt, seemingly confident that there were not many Nen users in the Hunter exam. Perhaps the Nen was too faint, as John couldn't discern it even with concentration. However, the result was good. After Chris dealt with the criminals, he used the ship to send John and his group to the exam venue. Chris, as an examiner, recorded the examinee's performance on the ship. John and the few who plotted to resist the pirates successfully advanced. Lindsay was told that he failed the test because he panicked in the face of danger and had weak combat skills. However, Lindsay didn't blame John. He knew that if it weren't for John, he would have been eliminated in the first round. Thank you, I'm very sorry for the past few days, Lindsay smiled slightly. Lindsay was still very grateful to John, who had pulled him along even when he himself was running out of strength. He hadn't abandoned him and run away during the storm. John's small face turned red. Lindsay's smile looked like a girl's. What a pity, such a pretty face, and it's a man, John lamented. John and Lindsay exchanged contact information before separating. After all, John had been carrying him through the previous rounds, and his strength was not yet up to the Hunter standard. So he left without any regrets. This made John breathe a sigh of relief. Suddenly, a hand patted John's shoulder, startling him. After all, Crimson King's endurance was only D, and he couldn't keep Epitaph active all the time. Turning his head, he saw a young man in a blue suit looking at John with a guilty expression. Sorry, I misunderstood you just now. This man was the one who had criticized John when he was fighting the pirates. It was clear that he was a very righteous person. Although he was a bit rigid, John didn't dislike this kind of person. John politely accepted his apology and walked away, mainly because he didn't want to get too close to him. In general, this kind of person was likely to offend others. John didn't want to cause trouble. Fortunately, he didn't pester John too much. After the second round of the exam, only 11 examinees remained. 5 people who fought alongside John against the pirates passed the test, and the other examinees passed the examiner Graken's test. Of course, there was one exception, and that was Hisoka, whose examiner had also lost track of him. Hisoka also looked at John gently. "We meet again, you are indeed not simple." His eyes narrowed into slits because of his smile. As expected, smiling eyes are all monsters. John nodded and smiled back. "Examinees, my name is Sergei. I'm a mercenary hunter. The next exam is not like the previous child's play. If you don't want to die, you can quit now." A tough guy in a green military uniform stood straight in front of the examinees with his hands behind his back. He's a soldier. He has a strong military air, and his skin has a tanned, dark brown color. He has the demeanor of a drill sergeant in the army. He scanned the examinees, and no one quit. He nodded slightly. "Next, follow me and run. Those who can't keep up will be considered to have failed the assessment." After speaking, he sprinted out like an arrow, without the slightest warning. Everyone reacted instantly and followed. Hisoka, of course, took the lead, surpassing most examinees with his superior physical fitness. However, surprisingly, there were still 2 examinees who kept up with Hisoka. Hisoka was only slightly better in terms of reaction speed, and they were closely following Hisoka. John and the main group were left behind, and John was near the back of the pack. Although he had cultivated ripple breathing, he was still too young after all, and his physical fitness was still not comparable to those adults. Hisoka was truly terrifying. People like John were sent by the examiners after being assessed midway, but Hisoka actually swam over, and the physical exertion was completely different. It was understandable that Hisoka had cultivated Nen, and his body would be tempered and strengthened, but those 2 animals who obviously didn't know Nen could only be described as awesome. They completely relied on their bodies to keep up with Hisoka. What was John, who had cultivated ripple breathing, supposed to think? As time passed, some people in the main group gradually couldn't keep up with the pace. They were injured in the first and second exams and had consumed a lot of energy, unable to sustain prolonged strenuous exercise, and gradually left the group. However, the 3 people in front were not affected at all. At this time, John's advantage of having special abilities was reflected. John gradually ran to the front of the main group. Ripple has a very strong ability to recover from physical fatigue. This is why Joseph was still able to support his high-intensity stand battles with Dio's subordinates in his old age. After an hour and a half of high-speed running, they arrived at a seaside cliff near the location where John landed on the island and stopped. At this time, most of the examinees were exhausted, and the number of participating examinees had been reduced to 8. The other 3 who didn't keep up were eliminated. The next one is the real test. The examiner turned around and said to the examinees steadily in a parade rest position. "Hey, you bastard, you made us run around in such a big circle, almost running all over the island. Are you trying to mess with us?" Hey, John was surprised that this kind of idiot would reach the final exam. Sure enough, almost as soon as he finished speaking, the examiner flashed in front of the examinee, and a white light flashed, and 7 wounds appeared on the examinee's body. The examinee was so scared that he peed his pants and fell to the ground. Not only him, but the other examinees were also filled with fear. John didn't expect this examiner to be so strong. If he didn't use his stand, he would definitely be instantly killed. Now the only one who was still calm on the field was Hisoka. After all, the Phantom Troop were all monsters. He usually saw Phaeton's speed a lot, so he didn't think much of it. At the speed of this examiner, he could only be considered a younger brother in the Phantom Troop. Hisoka himself might be able to reach this speed. Although he wasn't afraid, it aroused his vigilance. Seeing that this trick of killing the chicken to warn the monkey had an effect, the examiner turned around and said sternly, "The people who didn't keep up just now are undoubtedly lucky, at least they stayed away from death. Now you can still quit, this is your last chance. If you fail the next test, you will die, and I won't be able to save you. This cliff is 20 meters high, and there is a unique kind of scallop on it that is a very good ingredient. Your goal is this. John and the others looked down, and it was an almost vertical rock wall. The rock wall was also quite smooth, with few footholds. Every few seconds, waves crashed against the rock wall of the cliff, and this impact could instantly stun an adult. The scallop's moisture depends on the waves, so the scallops are all within the wave's impact range. To make matters worse, there were reefs under the rock wall, and the water level was very low. Jumping down would definitely be stabbed to death by the rocks below. The examiner didn't provide the examinees with safety equipment. Even in perfect condition, it would be difficult to complete, not to mention that the examinees had experienced a long run and their physical strength had reached their limit. It is almost impossible to do this now. Chapter 28. Let's go, we'll go from the sea. All eyes lit up. This suggestion made all the candidates' eyes light up, as the danger would be greatly reduced, only needing to guard against the huge waves. The examiner glanced at him. No, you can only retrieve it from this cliff, otherwise you will be considered unqualified. Are you kidding me? How could anyone possibly do this? A candidate roared in despair. But having reached the final stage, not many people can remain calm. Those who remain either have real strength like Knight, or they are taking a chance. In fact, not only them, even Knight was deep in thought. To be honest, although Knight is a very strong non-user, he has no solution for this almost vertical rock wall. But Knight was born in Meteor Street, which is known as having no good people, so he understands the principle. Even if there is no way to pass, Knight wants to wait and see if others have a solution. A middle-aged fatty with a small beard, pineapple hair and a red t-shirt, covered in tattoos, with thick arms, looked like a ruthless character. He wanted to try first. He slowly drew out the two short knives behind him. He was also one of the people who passed the pirate ship test with John, and he was also one of the initiators of that rebellion. He was good at using dual blades and killed 9 pirates in that battle, second only to John in combat achievements. He looked at the bottom of the cliff, took a deep breath, and closed his eyes. Then he exhaled forcefully and suddenly opened his eyes, jumping down. Everyone rushed forward and watched his challenge from the edge of the cliff. He was seen flying down, and 2 meters away from the nearest rock wall scallop, he twisted his wrist and shouted violently. Aha! He stabbed a knife into the rock wall of the cliff, and the blade collided and rubbed against the rock, producing a large number of sparks. Fortunately, the hardness of the rock that makes up this rock wall is not very high. Luck, that's really lucky. The fat man laughed. He still slid down more than a meter due to inertia before stopping. He was just the right distance away from the nearest rock wall scallop. He also waved the knife in his other hand and inserted it into the rock wall, his whole body tightly against the rock wall, motionless. The sea wave came, and a huge wave rushed over. Almost instantly, the wave swallowed his figure. The sea wave hit the rock wall and turned into silver fragments, shining brightly in the sun. The sea wave receded, and everyone breathed a sigh of relief. The fat man was not knocked down by the sea wave. He quickly released one hand and groped downwards diagonally, twisting it twice with force, and pried off the rock wall scallop attached to the rock wall. He put the rock wall scallop into his trouser pocket, then held the knives in both hands and slowly climbed upwards, one knife at a time. Aoo, aoo, aoo! A strange sound came from the distant sky, and everyone looked up, looking at the direction from which the sound came. The black shadow in the distant sky gradually appeared. It was a seagull. Under everyone's astonished gaze, the seagulls began to dive. The seagulls flew around the fat man and then pecked at the man's hand. These seagulls are obviously different from ordinary seagulls. Their size is much larger than normal seagulls, almost twice the size of normal seagulls. It is possible that because they have been eating nutritious rock wall scallops for many years, their size is very large. Their claws are also very sharp and can pry open rock wall scallops. Of course, the most important point is that they have a long lifespan and high intelligence, and they hate people who steal their food. The examiner looked at the seagulls with a smile and explained, without even looking at the other candidates. The man was attacked by the seagulls on his hand, his hands were covered in blood, and a piece of skin on his arm was torn off. The man was furious, pulled a knife out of the rock wall, and waved it at the seagulls. The powerful chop killed 2 seagulls that were very close. All the seagulls seemed to know that he was not easy to mess with and flew away in all directions. The man still waved at the seagulls violently twice. Not good, be careful. A candidate realized something and shouted to remind the man. The man was suddenly shrouded in a black shadow. It was a sea wave. The second wave of sea waves came again. Because the man had to drive away the seagulls, a knife had already been pulled out, so now only one hand was holding the knife for support. The sea wave rushed over unexpectedly and swallowed him in an instant. When the sea wave receded, a corpse lay at the bottom of the cliff, and blood spread under him. He is dead. Before long, the second candidate went up, mainly imitating the method of the previous candidate, learning from the previous lesson. He vowed never to let go of the hand holding the knife. The beginning was mediocre and similar to the previous candidate. The seagulls came again, and he had already brought rubber gloves to prevent the seagulls from pecking his hands. The seagulls did peck his hands and found that it had no effect. They started flying to his head. Then they started a very indecent attack. Yes, the seagulls flew to his head and pooped. It has to be said that although this trick is ugly, it is surprisingly useful. In a short while, his face was covered with a white solid liquid mixture, and he couldn't even open his eyes. The seagulls moved again, flying to his feet and pecking at his pants. They pecked open the trouser leg in an instant, and the rock wall scallop was snatched away by the seagulls. This series of operations made John's scalp tingle. The seagull's IQ was too high. What should this candidate do? He couldn't go up or down, the position was very awkward, he couldn't even open his eyes, and the item for the assessment was also lost. The seagull that snatched the candidate's scallop happily flew up, intending to go home and slowly enjoy the delicious rock wall scallop. Suddenly a fishing hook hooked the seagull. It was a candidate. He brought the same equipment as the protagonist, a fishing rod. He pulled the fishing rod to the ground with all his strength, and the seagull was also pulled to the ground by this sudden force. He snatched the seagull's rock wall scallop. Is this the legendary mantis catching cicada, Oriole behind? Exam passed. The examiner announced. John and Knight reluctantly withdrew their fiery gazes. Originally, John and the others planned to snatch his scallop, but they didn't expect the examiner to directly announce his passing. John regretted not thinking of this. After all, his stone free could also do this. However, using seagulls to catch scallops still inspired Knight. He threw out an antenna and stuck it on a seagull. Then he took out his puppet phone and operated it, and the seagull brought back a scallop. Test passed. The examiner doesn't care how you got the scallop. John's ripple also has control abilities, but it can't do such complex movements. Stone free can reach the place where the scallops grow, but the power of stone free decreases with the increase of distance, and the power of stone free is not enough to pry off the rock wall scallops at that distance. What to do? John was in trouble. Chapter 29. Leorio was clearly not kind enough to help John, and owing Leorio a favor was too troublesome. In his past life, John suffered from acrophobia and always closed his eyes when riding high-altitude amusement park rides. Moreover, there were no safety guarantees here. John involuntarily took a step back as he looked down the cliff, and cold sweat streamed down his cheeks. Damn, it's really high. Although John had obtained extraordinary abilities, he still couldn't overcome the fear from the depths of his soul. No, I must use the invincible King Crimson to think of a solution quickly. John forced himself to calm down. John seemed to have thought of something. He closed his eyes, rushed towards the cliff at a rapid pace, and jumped off in everyone's astonished gaze. Everyone was stunned by John's actions. One must know that John didn't bring a knife, and jumping down like that would be certain death. Moreover, he didn't look like someone with N abilities that would allow him to fly. The examiner was also frightened. John couldn't use N, and John hadn't used his stand in front of this examiner, so the examiner instinctively thought John was an ordinary person. Although Leorio was also a little surprised, he still believed in John. After all, John was an enemy that even his puppet phone couldn't subdue. John jumped down just like that, without any precautions. John's body gradually fell, passing the spot where the rock oysters were being collected. John still didn't move. It seems like a madman who has given up hope. The examiner lowered his hat, shook his head, and stopped paying attention to John. At this height, even enhancement-type non-users would be injured without any precautions, and ordinary people would definitely die. John landed with a splat in the sea reefs at the bottom of the cliff. What a pity. Young people nowadays don't know how to be flexible. They should keep their lives and come back again next year. Really? Who says otherwise? I think he's just... Hey, look. It's so strange. Why isn't there any blood under his body? One of the examinees seemed to have noticed an anomaly. The examiner also opened his eyes and looked towards John. John, who everyone thought should have already died, slowly raised his arm. John activated time erasure as soon as his body touched the water. Everyone was watching John, so the result was that they were watching John. No one present realized that time had been erased. As long as he didn't look down, John still wouldn't chicken out. Now that John had reached the lowest point, he could just climb upwards with all his strength, which could be considered a different way of solving his acrophobia. Is he really human? But he doesn't have any climbing tools, so how will he get up there? At this steep slope, let's see how he gets up. After all, he's not a gecko, he can't possibly climb up. John couldn't hear their conversation, otherwise he would definitely mock them. John walked to the rock wall and stood upright. He slowly stretched out his hands, placing them flat against the rock wall of the cliff, and then lifted his palms, leaving only his 5 fingers touching the wall. Then he placed his toes against the wall. That is. Leorio looked at John in surprise. Although John was using ripple energy, ripple is also a type of life energy, and its nature is similar to aura. Therefore, people with Nin abilities could still clearly see the energy on John's fingers. John was using a type of ripple energy application. Ripple energy has adhesive properties, which can achieve the effect of climbing walls. Lisa once used the Hell Climb pillar to test Joseph Joestar. Joseph took several days to pass the test, which shows its difficulty. John's current ripple power is a little weaker than Joseph's when he first challenged the Hell Climb pillar. Therefore, the game system hasn't opened this level yet. However, this rock wall is not as good as the Hell Climb pillar. This rock wall is naturally formed, so it's a bit uneven, and there's no oil on the rock wall to hinder John. Unlike Joseph, who had to explore ripple techniques on his own, John directly stood on the shoulders of his predecessors and didn't make the mistakes that Joseph made. He used the most correct method to climb from the beginning. Hey, is he really a gecko? One of the examinees was shocked by John's special ability. John easily pried off a rock oyster with stone free and continued to climb. Caw, caw, caw. The seagulls above noticed John snatching their food and roared angrily. Everyone was looking forward to John's performance. After all, the first 2 examinees suffered a great loss from the ospreys. They wanted to see how John dealt with the seagulls, which could give them some reference. However, they were destined to be disappointed. John summoned Stone Free. John didn't plan to expose King Crimson, and as soon as a seagull approached, it was a flurry of ora ora. No matter how fast the seagulls flew, they weren't as fast as Stone Free's punches, which approached the speed of sound. Although Stone Free wasn't fully developed, it was still a super powerful stand with destructive power of A. If it couldn't defeat a giant crocodile, it could still defeat a few small seagulls. As for the seagulls that dared to fly onto John's head, Stone Free also retaliated with retractable punches. Almost 20 seagulls were killed within a minute. The seagulls weren't stupid. As soon as they saw that John was a ruthless character, they knew he was not to be trifled with. No seagulls dared to harass John during his subsequent climb. John spent more than an hour climbing up the cliff and successfully submitted the task. As for the other examinees, they were desperate. The challenges of the previous few examinees who passed had no reference value at all. The first one was snatching the ospreys, which was a matter of luck. The second one was Leorio, whose rock oysters were delivered by the seagulls themselves, so how could they imitate that? As for John, it was even more ridiculous. He jumped down directly and then. Never mind, this requires risking your life to imitate. Whether it was the method of going down and then coming up, or the technique of dealing with seagulls, it all relied on superpowers. Except for Leorio, the examinees were all ordinary people. From their perspective, the seagulls approached John and then died inexplicably. The next examinees had one MMP to say, and it must be said. Isn't there a normal method? What the hell is this snake-like behavior? The examinees were as desperate as if they found poop in their porridge, and there was poison in the poop. However, there was still one examinee who passed. From the beginning, he hadn't paid attention to the challenges of John and the others. Having maxed out his hands-on ability, he first went to the jungle and obtained a few vines to make a simple rope. He successfully completed the assessment. Others wanted to imitate him, but there wasn't much time left. They didn't get the rock oysters within the prescribed time limit and were persuaded to leave. So far, a total of 4 people have passed the hunter exam. The examiner distributed the hunter licenses one by one, and a ship would send John and the others back to the nearest port. The hunter exam was completely over. John's phone rang. This phone was given to him by the old butler. It looked like an old man's phone, but it was drop-resistant and waterproof. It was another world's Nokia. John's phone only had the old butler and his wife saved as contacts. This call was obviously not made by the old butler. Who could it be? John answered the phone. Hello, is this John? I heard, congratulations on passing the hunter exam. Could I ask you for a favor? Chapter 30. Ding dong, hunter exam completed. A familiar voice echoed in my mind, and 2 stand cards lay quietly in John's game system inventory. The game system's protection period was almost over. Buying stand cards was only possible in the early stages, when you had less than 5 stands, as a protection mechanism to prevent some unlucky players from quitting the game. Once the number of stands exceeded 5, the system would lock the channel for purchasing stand cards. To obtain stands, you could only rely on universal cards and test your luck. Universal cards were super, and some of the stands you got were limited time trial versions. Getting items was even more, like Poke's favorite coffee-flavored gum or Tequila Girl's lipstick. Of course, if you were lucky enough, it could be very powerful. Some lucky players could continuously draw arrow fragments and synthesize the arrow to complete Requiem. Some people had also drawn Beyond Heaven's Notebook and the Saint's Corpse, but this was something you could only encounter by chance, with a probability almost like winning the lottery. John bought 2 sardines from the crew at a low price and released them. He originally wanted to get a koi, but conditions were limited. There were no koi in the sea, and other fish were too expensive, so he could only choose 2 sardines. He also somehow managed to trick 3 low-quality cigarettes of unknown brand from the crew. Koi, bless me to get star platinum. Then John bowed 3 times in the direction of the released sardines. After all, they were both fish, and the sardines could probably say a few good words for John in front of their koi compatriots. Look at that kid, you can tell he failed the hunter exam and went crazy. So pitiful. The crew looked at John like he was an idiot, some even showing compassionate concern. John, with an excited heart, was making a prayer, completely unaware of the crew's slander. John calmed his breathing and prepared to get started. After a burst of light, a black figure gradually appeared. The purple body was covered with white mesh stripes. However, the colors in the middle of the stripes varied in depth, and the ears were columnar. Metal rings were worn on the wrists and ankles, and the zipper-shaped design on the chin resembled a pharaoh's beard. This stand was Highway Star, whose original owner was Yuya, who appeared in the Diamond is Unbreakable arc. At first, he was an enemy of the main group, but later he was physically moved by Yasuke, and successfully turned to the good side and joined the main group. Highway Star, Destructive Power C, Speed B, Precision E, Range A, Persistence A, Growth Potential C. Overall, it was not bad, with a running speed of up to 60 km per hour. It also came with a super sense of smell and could share the 5 senses with the user. When chasing enemies, the stand could be decomposed into discs and turned into footprint shapes. Most importantly, Highway Star could absorb the nutrients of enemies and transfer them to the user. The enemy would fall into a state of weakness due to the sudden loss of a large amount of nutrients. Moreover, Highway Star could not be destroyed even by a shredder. This could be said to be the nemesis of sword masters like Nobunaga. Highway Star fighting Nobunaga was like a low-profile version of Black Sperm fighting Atomic Samurai. John calmed down. Well, although it wasn't as good as Star Platinum, it was still a very good stand. Then John clicked on the second stand card. It was a familiar black shadow, gradually appearing. John couldn't help but curse when he saw this stand. A round, red body with a hideous face. It gave people a terrifying feeling. But it was useless. This stand was called Pearl Jam. I don't even want to talk about the stats. Destructive Power E, Precision E, playing a snake. In fact, Pearl Jam had no attack power at all, but the lower limit of the stand's stats was E. Hermit Purple could at least strangle people's necks. But Pearl Jam really had no attack power. However, with Pearl Jam, he no longer had to eat dry food all the time. Pearl Jam saved John's instant noodle level cooking skills. As long as he had Pearl Jam, even shit could be turned into a peerless delicacy. It was truly terrifying. But with this stand, opening a restaurant in the future would definitely be a profitable venture. Moreover, it could have a therapeutic effect and could also use the gimmick of dietary therapy to deceive rich people. Well, he decided that he must open his own restaurant. John dialed the phone again. Hello, Robson? This is John. Who is that person? Robson wanted to hire John to join his team after he learned and to pursue wanted fugitives. Oh, he is someone you would never imagine. As for who it is, allow me to keep you in suspense. You'll know when the time comes. But I have a piece of information. Your Nin tutor is in the Heavens Arena, but I'm not very familiar with your tutor, but there's no doubt that he/she is a very powerful Nin user. The protagonist Gon and his best friend Killua learned Nin here. Here, Gon returned the number plate to Hisoka. This was a legendary place. High bonuses attracted countless martial artists and Nin users. Chairman Netero and Hisoka, these powerful Nin users, were all floor masters of this arena. However, with the epitaph of Crimson King and the twin guarantees of Stone Freeze thread-like body, as long as he didn't encounter those monsters, safety was basically not a problem. John bought a train ticket to Heaven's Arena. It would take 2 days and 1 night by train from this port to reach the city where Heaven's Arena was located. Of course, there were also airplanes, but train tickets were relatively cheaper, and John didn't have much money left. In order to bribe the old fisherman to take him to the exam venue, John had already spent most of his money. John was an ordinary college student in his previous life. He wouldn't donate all of his pocket money, but he wouldn't deliberately steal other people's things. Although John had stand abilities that surpassed ordinary people, he wouldn't use stand abilities to commit crimes. Of course, unless the other party pitted him first. John wasn't stupid, of course he wouldn't sell his hunter license, so John could only live a tight life. John picked up his small backpack and walked into the carriage, found a window seat, put the package in the overhead storage compartment, and then sat down. The train development in this world was still very slow, and this train was not very fast. John bought a seat ticket, which was quite crowded. Boss, this kid seems to be the kid who participated in the last exam. If you didn't say so, I wouldn't have noticed. It really is. This kid must be a rich man who bribed the examiners to get to the final round. Boss, let's take them down. Impossible, have you ever seen a rich man who takes the train and buys a seat ticket? He must have traded his virginity to the examiner. A bald man in his 40s with a fierce face seemed to have thought of something. In that case, find him and let the 3 of us enjoy him too. Alas, it is possible that he really passed the hunter exam. Brother, what are you talking about? How could a mere kid possibly pass? No matter what, let's find him and ask him first. Fortunately, there was still someone who could think calmly. The other 2 uncles were staring at John evilly in the sleeper car. John was completely unaware of this, and was still resting his head on one hand, leaning against the car window, watching the scenery passing by.